Okay, it's 7. Can you hear me? It's 7 p.m. We'll go ahead and get started. All right, we're going to call to order this meeting of the Planning Commission of the City of Forest Grove, Oregon. Can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Sanderson,
Here.
Commissioner Birdall.
Here.
Commissioner Culbertson,
Here online. Apologies, got the stomach bug.
thank you. Commissioner Ellis, I believe told us she was going to be absent today. Commissioner Falconer. Commissioner Farrell.
Here.
And Commissioner Stenberg.
Here. Thank you. Moving to item 2A on the agenda, we have, as part of the public meeting, the public comment period for non-agenda items. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda may be heard at this time. In the interest of time, please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. Is there anyone here to speak on an item that is not on the agenda this evening? Yes. Come forward, go ahead and state your name and address for the record.
My address is 3529 Lavina Drive.
Okay.
So I've been here before for the same subject, but I hear there's going to be a meeting where they're going to be talking about building standards. So I wanted to get this in again, if possible. I'm really worried about what's happening with Forest Grove as far as the new building and everything's going, and I want to keep it a friendly home city. So I did have some slides. I should say I am an award-winning builder and designer, and I built in Forest Grove for about 20 years, and I'm retired. So this picture that I have right here, if you've been up David Hill, you will have recognized it besides whatever is happening off the fence. This is something that hasn't been happening here, and it was not a local builder, so you can kind of tell why. But if you look at the windows in these pictures, and then show the next slide, this is a closer up view. And what happens there is these people, these builders have windows, they're just vinyl windows, and they're, putting them in because it's a lot cheaper. And what we've always had as a basic standard here, and I've talked to a lot of other people that feel it as a standard, but nobody knows where it came from, is that there's supposed to be wood wrapped around these windows. Any place that they're facing a street, whether that's behind your house or on the side of your house or on the front of your house, so that it looks nice going through. All the way up David Hill, there's beautiful houses. Some of them look better in the backyard than they do in the front. So the next slide shows what I'm talking about. So you see the difference here in the windows. These windows have nice wide trim around them. This is the backyard that faces it. And the ironic thing about this home is the show home for the same builder that put those other houses in without a window, without the window trim. So in other words, they brought people, they knew what was right, that looked good for the community to bring people in to buy in their subdivision. And once they did, then they lowered the standards. And if you have a house that has windows like this that aren't wrapped, then you can imagine where they've saved money on the inside, because it'll be much worse. So that I called other builders. I have 20 builders here that I called to find out if they wrap their windows. About 7 of them said that they wrapped all the windows around the house, not just on the street side, all the way around, so it looks beautiful. So anyway, that is my point. I'm trying to get it so that we don't fall into this situation. I talked to Sam Pertesi, who is in the new subdivision that's going in there, and he had no idea that there's not a written standard for putting trim around windows. Everybody thinks it's still a standard. Anybody that's an older builder, for sure. So what I'd like to see happen is this standard to be put in the book. We have so much low-income housing coming in here and buildings coming in here that we need to at least keep this looking like the community that it should be looking. So I also went out and collected signatures. So I have those. Every single person, if you show them that house and that house, you know, they wonder, why are you even asking? Obviously, you know. So that's my hope again, that the committee will revisit this and let us be one of the cities that can really shine and keep, you know, looking like a family. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming down and keeping this this issue at the forefront of our consideration and for all the homework you did. We appreciate it. Is there anyone else here that wants to comment on an item that's not on the agenda this evening? Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to comment on an item that is not on the agenda this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll turn to item B, public hearing on file number 311-24-000006-PLNG, appeal of type 2 administrative staff decision approving Crane Data Center campus project, including phased construction of 2 buildings, equipment yard, recreation area, parking area, and street improvements in the city's light industrial zone located at 3975 Heather Street. Now, I have several pages of instructions here that I have to read, and they're long and boring, but they include important information, I promise. So it explains how things are going to proceed this evening. I will now call to order tonight's public hearing on case file 311-24-000006-PLNG. Tonight, the Planning Commission will open a public hearing and consider an appeal to staff's administrative decision granting conditional approval of a site development plan for construction of a data center campus at 3975 and 3393 Heather Street. The site is in the city's light industrial zoning district. The Planning Commission must decide this appeal based on the applicable review criteria. For site development review, Forest Grove Development Section 17.2.450 states the Community Development Director shall review and approve, conditionally approve or deny the site development plan based on the following criteria. A, the applicant demonstrates the site development plan complies with standards of the base zoning district, Article 3, any overlay district, and the general development standards of Article 8. B, the site development plan addresses the development standards in Article 5, which is natural resource areas, tree protection, and historic resources, when such resources are present on or directly adjacent to the development site. Persons wishing to provide testimony on this matter are asked to print your name and address on the public hearing sign-up sheet located in the community auditorium foyer or raise their hand in Zoom during the public testimony period. I will recognize those people wishing to speak. When called, please come to the table in the auditorium as the hearing is recorded, or wait until you are called upon by me to speak via Zoom. Please state your name and address for the record and keep testimony concise, addressing the applicable decision criteria. Any questions for the Planning Commission or city staff should be directed to me. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. First, individual Planning Commission members will be asked to disclose any ex parte comments, bias, or conflicts of interest. Staff will then provide a report briefly summarizing the proposal and administrative decision, correspondence received, applicable decision criteria, and the appeals issues. The data center applicant will then have an opportunity to present their project. After the applicant's presentation, the appellant will have an opportunity to present the appeal issues. Persons in support, opposition, and others neutral about the proposal will be called to the podium or via Zoom to testify in that order in order to provide testimony. If you testify, speak into the microphone, state your name and address, and direct your comments to the criteria listed in the staff report. The Planning Commission must base its recommendation on these criteria. Following public testimony, the data center applicant will be asked to provide a rebuttal to the issues raised during the public testimony. The Planning Commission may decide the appeal tonight. However, the Planning Commission may grant continuation of the public hearing to a time and date certain that is at least 7 days from tonight's hearing, or leave the record open for additional written evidence. If the record is left open, the record shall remain open for at least 7 days for the purpose of responding to new written evidence. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient detail to allow the Planning Commission, the applicant, or staff to respond to the issue precludes an appeal on that issue to the City Council or Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals. I will now open the hearing. I will now ask staff to call the roll so any members of the Planning Commission may disclose any ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest. Please indicate the nature of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in an impartial manner or abstain from the hearing. May we have a roll call?
Chair Sanderson?
Yes. I, just out of an overabundance of caution, I'm going to disclose that I have seen some chatter about this issue on social media. I haven't sought it out. I'm just members of groups in which it's been discussed, and I have refrained from participating in that discussion so I can remain as neutral as possible. I think I can make an unbiased decision, and I intend to participate in tonight's hearing.
Commissioner Birdall?
I'm going to start by saying that I do believe that I can participate in tonight's hearing in an unbiased way. It's similar to what you mentioned. I have seen signs and heard statements, but I have not delved far into anything other than what was presented to me in this.
Commissioner Culbertson?
Hello, I too have no conflict of interest, financial or otherwise. I've seen a few posts on social media. Outside of that, I haven't invested myself in, forming a judgment beyond this meeting. Thank you.
Commissioner Falconer? Commissioner Farrell?
Had no, same as the other commissioners, I think I can have a non-biased.
And Commissioner Stenberg?
I don't believe that I have any conflict of interest, and I do not participate in Facebook. So I haven't seen any comments or anything. I have seen the signs though, but I think that I can make a good decision here.
All right, does anyone in the audience wish to challenge a planning commissioner's impartiality on this matter? Does anyone on Zoom wish to challenge a planning commissioner's impartiality? Seeing none, we'll proceed with the staff report. Community Development Director Brian Pohl will now present the staff report and state if additional correspondence has been received since publication of staff report for tonight's hearing.
get a microphone. Okay, yes, that sounds like I should be on now. The proposal is for the development of a data center campus with 2 buildings with footprints of approximately 178,000 square feet each. Building 1, the southern portion of the site, would be 40 feet tall as the first phase of construction, and Building 2 would be 75 feet tall as the second phase of construction. There are also associated parking, stormwater quality facilities, equipment yard, and landscaping. And this would also include the connection of Heather Street to Mountain View, which is identified in the city's transportation system plan and would then be completed by the city after completion and acceptance of the street construction. This would be kind of your half-street improvements that the developer would usually do. The city would then go in and finish out the rest of the street after those half-street improvements were finished. You can see a site plan here of what's proposed. Not much to belabor here. I think you've all seen this in your packet. This up here, get that to work. That is Building 1, if I'm correct. Building 2, and that is Building 1 right there. The relevant criteria that apply to this development project are found in Development Code 17.2.450. These criteria include that the applicant demonstrate the site development plan complies with the base zoning district and any overlay district and the general development standards of Article 8, and that the site development plan addresses the development standards in Article 5, which include natural resource areas, tree protection, and historic resources when such uses are present or directly adjacent to the site. Your relevant criteria: there are no required setbacks in the light industrial zone. There is no building height limitation in the light industrial zone. There are requirements for circulation, parking, Department of Environmental Quality Review, Metro Review, etc. There are also requirements for solid waste collection areas, landscaping, the requirement to do public improvements, and things like that. These are all covered in detail in the original staff decision, and they are not necessarily at issue tonight. And so we're going to kind of call out each of the appeal issues that were raised by the appellant. And I want to just kind of be careful with the nomenclature here. The appellant is one of the surrounding property owners. He's in the audience tonight. And the applicant is Crane Data Center. So when I say applicant, I mean Crane. When I say appellant, I mean the person who actually appealed this decision. Not the person who applied for the appeal. That can be confusing sometimes. So the staff decision, again, was approved with conditions on July 31st, 2024. And again, the decision and the findings are in the record. That notice was sent, and the appeal filed was on August 12th, I should say 2024, not 2014. Hope that's obvious. And so we'll start with just sort of the appeal issues that were raised. There were a number of issues raised in this appeal. And only a few of these really kind of have a basis in the code and criteria that apply to the project. We're going to address what is possible below and in the following slides. They were concerned about promoting good neighborhood design and upholding property values. These are really found in the purpose statements of some of the zoning districts, but they're not development code criteria. This is kind of well established in LUBA case law. That purpose statements are not regulatory, that purpose statements are meant to kind of frame the purpose for the regulations that then follow those purpose statements. There was concern that the applicants themselves are not residents. This is not something that we review, nor is it a development code criterion. There was some mention about Rowan Green Data Center, which is not germane to the approval of this application. And will have no bearing on how this application proceeds or proceeded. There is some concern, a lot of concern, I guess, about the ability for this data center development to be able to get power to serve the proposed development. This is not a criterion for land use approval. I do want to say that we do have a representative tonight from Forest Grove Light and Power, who, if you do have questions about light and power issues, they will be able to answer any of those questions to the best of their ability. It should be noted here that, this is a sort of a preliminary approval. This is a land use approval. And so this is sort of maps and lines on a map and parking and setbacks and things like that. This is not necessarily, there's a whole permitting process that happens after the land use approval. This is to lend some surety to the developer as they move forward that their land use can work and that they will then begin to endeavor to work through the rest of these issues. If they can't get power, then they'll have to figure something out. But I'm not the person to speak to that per se. We do have Keith Horn from Light and Power here who can speak to that. So if you do have questions, like I said, he's available tonight in the back of the audience. There's also concern about a multi-phase development approach being taken. It's not prohibited by the development code, and so not something that we would either approve or deny an application on. Notification issues. There was concern about both sort of the notification area, the 300 feet that we use, surrounding the subject property. There was some concern about the notification only being provided in English. Certainly those are issues that relevant with the Spanish translation. Those are great ideas for the future. Our code specifies nothing of the sort, just that we provide notice. We've never done that in the past. We could do it in the future, obviously, but that's not something that would be dispositive of this application in front of you. The 300 feet is pretty clear that we notice anybody who is a property owner within 300 feet of the subject site, and that's what was done in this case. And so that would be staff's response to that. Timeline for power from the BPA, again, not a development code criterion. I understand that the applicant is still working back and forth with the Light and Power Department. I would let the applicant speak to that very issue, or the Light and Power as you might feel comfortable. But it's not an approval criterion in development code. So if you have concerns, that can be addressed later. Water availability, again, it's not a development code criterion. Certainly there's reasons to kind of think about that issue and contemplate that issue. But that's not something that is reviewed as part of this application. Again, this is sort of an initial approval that would lend some surety to the applicant to start working through those issues in greater detail with the city through the permitting process. Increased power use and higher rates. The idea of higher rates is speculative. There's no evidence that that's going to happen. That's certainly a concern that I think that many people are raising. That certainly perhaps somebody could speak to on the Light and Power side, but not an approval criteria in the development code. Try not to overshoot here. Jen, can you get me to the next slide? There was some discussion that the city should demand an environmental impact statement. Again, not a development code criteria. The environmental impacts and sort of relevant regulations around environmental are addressed through permitting with Department of Environmental Quality and Clean Water Services. With sort of noise, the applicant, of course, will be subject to the city's municipal code for noise. That's not found in the development code. That is in the municipal code. And that is ongoing regulatory language that they will have to comply with, not just at the time of opening, but also into the future. So it becomes a compliance issue at that point. Electromagnetic, that's a hard word to say when you're nervous. Electromagnetic fields, again, not a development code criterion. It was addressed by the applicant, and obviously if you have any questions about that, please feel free to ask the applicant, and I'm sure that will come up from the appellants as well again tonight. Next slide. One of the issues that did get raised that staff did feel probably needed to get a little bit of sort of play in front of the Planning Commission is the data center land use classification. And in that appeal, the appeal argues that the data centers were not in existence when the development code was written. And indeed, I think that's probably correct. The development code references the 1997 NAICS, the North American Industry Classification System. But it's important to also point out that land use classifications are based on broad categories and sort of meant to sort of be a sort of common functional product or physical characteristics that allow for present and future uses of sites. And according to 1712.100, uses are assigned to categories whose description most closely matches the nature of the primary uses. In this case, next slide, please. In 17.3.250, table 312, information is listed as an outright permitted use in the light industrial zone. information is defined, as you see there, uses that are engaged in the following processes: producing and distributing information and cultural products, providing the means to transmit or distribute these products, as well as the data or communications, and processing data. Included in this definition are those establishments within Sector 51 of the NAICS, 1997 edition, with the exception of motion picture, video, and display. 1997 NAICS 51 includes online information services and data processing services. So that's important to note there. Next slide, please. And that's really all for the staff presentation. We're available for any questions you may have. You may kind of hold questions and ask the applicant or see what kind of unfolds through the hearing. But staff is available for any questions you might have right now.
Do any commissioners have questions for staff at this juncture?
Actually do. So you mentioned that people have questions about electric use that the city power and light are here. If they have questions about water usage, who can they ask?
Thank you for asking that, Commissioner Berdahl. Actually, we have Public Works both on Zoom as well as in the audience right now. And I believe the primary contact will be on Zoom to answer any Public Works questions.
And so I'll follow that up with just an obvious question, which is, you know, we had a lot of materials to read and prepare for tonight, and I read every single page of it. I believe my fellow commissioners did as well. And so this is a repeat concern, right? That there will be insufficient power, you know, because this is a power-hungry operation, or there will be insufficient water for the cooling systems that go into the data center. And so if there isn't sufficient power or there isn't sufficient water supply, what happens to the project?
Well, again, you know, if this is approved, or if the appeal is not upheld, or I'm sorry, if the application is not if the application is upheld and the appeal is not successful, and this application does move forward, they will enter into a whole permitting process with Public Works as far as reviewing things like water consumption, water infrastructure, things like that. They'll be into agreements with Light and Power and things like that. This is sort of to provide the authorization of, you know, that this is a permitted use, that it meets the development standards and things like that. There's a whole permitting process after that that takes place with the agencies that we've mentioned before. That you know, if it can't get worked out, then it could be fatal for the project. It just depends on sort of what happens. Now, they could still potentially build the buildings and use them for other things, as long as they're consistent with the zone. But what was filed in front of staff at this point was for the data center campus, and that's how we're reviewing this right now. And but obviously, yeah, if they can't get the power, they can't get the water, or something sort of is fatal to this project, then that's going to really send them back to the drawing boards, how they might move forward. I'm not here to speculate on how that might move forward. The applicant can probably tell you how they're going to move forward with those sorts of things, if they have contingency plans or whatever, but that's the gist of how it works.
Any further questions? All right, thank you. We'll now turn to the applicant's presentation. I would now like to invite the project applicant to come up to the center table to present their proposal. Please state your name and address for the record.
All right, is this the correct mic? Is this the one that's on? Yeah? Okay. I will do my best. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Allison Reynolds. I am a land use attorney with Stoll Reeves, and I am here representing the applicant, Crane Data Centers. My address for the record is 760 Southwest 9th Avenue, Portland, Oregon, 97205. So we thank you, Brian, for that thorough presentation. I suppose not surprisingly, agree with the staff decision in this matter. I think it was a very helpful thing that Brian just walked through to explain the relevant approval criteria for site development review and what we are actually asking the city to approve for this project at this time. And so there are several questions, though, from neighbors and others that wrote in during the initial staff decision that we think would be helpful to clarify and explain some of the misperceptions that might be going on here. And so we'd like to use our presentation to do that and to hopefully clarify some things about the project for you, which we hope will help with your decision. And so along that line, I am here representing Crane, but we also have many members of the Crane team. And I'm going to kind of pass this mic around somehow to these folks. We also have some members of the team joining online. And so if at any point you have questions for us, we probably have the right person to answer those for you. So please just let us know. So I am now going to pass this over to Matt with Crane. And, oh, great. Thank you.
And if just each member of the applicant team could state their name and address the first time they're speaking so we have a complete record, we'd appreciate it.
Perfect.
Hello. Thank you for making the time tonight. My name is Matt File. I'm the CEO of Crane Data Centers. My address is 34 Lander Street, San Francisco, California, 94114. I think presentation.
Yeah, we have a PowerPoint, so give us just 1 second. And all right, something. That's
Something
pictures.
there.
And just to ensure we're sharing this with the participants on Zoom. I'm sorry, I can't see, so you may already be doing.
It's open.
It looked like it was. Oh, okay. Sorry. So I'm going back. There we go. Great. Thank you so much. So thanks again for speaking with us today and for your dedication to the city of Forest Grove. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce myself and Crane. Having spent years working for a giant technology company, I learned a lot about data centers and how important they are to the modern world. One of the reasons I left that corporate job was because I believed in the possibility of having a positive impact on society. And started a small company to focus on being a force for good. I wanted to develop data centers that serve the needs of society while doing so in a sustainable manner. I'm passionate about data centers because these buildings are one of the most important foundations for modern society. The internet isn't just located in the cloud, that the information of the internet is actually processed and stored in data centers. As a result, data centers really underpin our modern society. They are actually foundational to everything we do on a day-to-day basis. The phones that we carry, the online banking that we use, social media for those that use it, appliances, credit card payments, Netflix, and even the Zoom video that we're on today all go through data centers. We literally not do what we do today without data centers. and I think it's really important to call that out because I think there's a lot of misinformation around data centers, but they are critical infrastructure for how we currently live in this modern society. Beyond that foundational importance, data centers can actually be a force for good by being an active in communities such as Forest Grove. And on behalf of our team of 8 people at Crane Data Center, I want to thank you for the time today. We're really excited about the possibility of being a member of the Forest Grove community. Next slide, please.
Yeah, let's be respectful of whoever's speaking, and hopefully they'll do the same for you when it's your turn at the mic. Thank you.
Thank you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our approach to sustainability. So we had actually heard concerns. We originally were designing the data center for using recycled water. We're located right next to Clean Water Services wastewater treatment plant. And so we initially had planned to use recycled water for cooling. We heard from the city that there were some concerns about using potable water as a backup source. So we actually changed the entire design to an air-based cooling design for the first data center. So I wanted to call that out because water has been a focus of a lot of the comments, and I just want to call out, we actually are not using water for cooling. We'll be using potable water for the employees on site for drinking purposes. We care a lot about sustainability, so another thing we're doing at the building is we're actually going to harvest rainwater and use that to flush sanitary fixtures. It's not something we have to do. It's something we want to do because we think it's the right thing. We are very respectful of water sources. We're focused on using 100% renewable power. Again, had a lot of conversations with Forest Grove Light and Power, and we wanted to be in an area that had renewable energy, and thankfully the Pacific West is one of those areas. We are going to have the building be certified, and we're focusing on a very, very low PUE, which in our industry is a sign of sustainability, energy efficient. Next slide. Wanted to talk a little bit about the benefits. I know many of these are not really relevant for land use application, but I do want to call out the benefits because this is, I think, the first time that people maybe have the opportunity to think about not only some of the what I'll call misinformation about the project, but some of the benefits. We will be hiring locally. Local jobs support the local economy. These jobs will be higher paying than most of the jobs in the local community. And this is a long-term investment. So these are stable jobs that stick around for decades. The investment will also benefit the local community, local businesses that are here. Data centers end up purchasing a lot of things that are local, hotels, restaurants, services, etc. And that translates into positive economic activity in the community. We're actually excited about the possibility of partnering with schools as well as local art programs to display art in the data center. And then finally, I just want to call this out. Because this site is zoned light industrial, when you look at the possible uses of this site and the alternatives to data centers, most of those are actually much higher impact on the things like traffic, noise, etc. will most likely be more impactful than data centers. Data centers are low impact, and you'll see later in the slide. We think we've designed a building that's very aesthetically pleasing and much more expensive than the alternatives, which get property tax, etc. So I think overall we're very obviously optimistic about the positive impacts on this development. Three other things I wanted to call out just specifically that are being developed as part of this program. So we are actually paying for and constructing a new Heather Street Heather Street extension between Mountain View Lane and Poplar Street. This is something that we actually talked a lot with the city planning department about. This has been in the transportation plan for a long time, and it will actually help east-west traffic in the city. And the things that they told us that it will do is, improve access, improve safety, and improve traffic flows specifically. Our project is not actually going to cause a lot of traffic, but this is something we wanted to do as a benefit of us coming here, right? So we're investing the money to build that House Street improvement, and we think that's a benefit to the city. I talked about water usage a little bit, but again, this is something we changed the design to address the concerns. We're moving to that air-based cooling system. The last thing I'll touch on is the electrical infrastructure. We've been working with Forest Grove Light Power for over 3 years, and we're very confident in power delivery for the site. This is something that's critical for all data center development, and we obviously would not build a building as a data center if it didn't have power. That would be very, very naive to do. And I think that that raising that consideration actually at this point in time is not the appropriate time. This is a land use application. This is an irrelevant consideration, but I just want to call out, like, we're not naive. Like, our team has been doing this all over the world for decades, and power is an important ingredient. That being said, the current discussions with Forest Grove Power, well, one of the ideas that we talked to them about is the possibility of actually co-investing in infrastructure that will help the city improve the overall power system, to increase resiliency, reliability, and actual community. And so what that ultimately translates into for everyone here is, number one, we will not be a burden on any of the other ratepayers, as it has been suggested. That's been a goal and underpinning what Forest Grove Light Towers and our discussions have been for the last 3 years. And number two, that will also minimize future power outages in the city, which is, with climate change, is absolutely something that I think is considered. So I will pass it to Navik. Oh, wait, sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah. So we want to just switch out. I can leave. I mean, either way. Okay.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. We have a few other team members. So are you going to? Yeah. All right. Scott's going to take it away.
Good evening. My name is Scott Franklin with Navix Engineering. Address is 10135 Southeast Sunnyside Road, Clackamas, Suite 200, Clackamas 97015. As with Allison and Matt, I appreciate the staff's time on this. They've done an incredibly thorough job throughout the review process, from even before the application, and then through that review process, and you've seen results of that discussion. That honestly hard questions from staff in terms of how we work through the site, how we make utilities work, how we make the street connections work. All of those things are issues that what you see in front of you is a result of, in some cases, pushback and solutions offered by the Crane team, and some well thought out processes and requirements by the city. Next, so this slide, first, I guess, to hit on Matt's point, this is the zoning map from the comprehensive plan. And as you can see, there are 2 areas within the city that allow industrial development. And in fact, this area, kind of in the south central portion of the city, is the only place in the city that allows a light industrial zone. It's separated from the rest of the property to the north by the railroad tracks. Everything west of Mountain View and south of the tracks is light industrial until you get over to the general industrial area. And that's important because the comprehensive plan is, as you all know, is a projection of where the city's growth is going. And to have a vibrant city, you have to have a balance of residential and commercial and industrial and open space, all of those things. And there was a lot of work done by the city to plan for the industrial use within the city that minimizes that overall impact of the city. And so this use is one of those key elements. This industrial development of this property is the key element. But this use is, in terms of intensive uses that could be allowed within the zone, this is a very light industrial. As Matt mentioned, the traffic generation from it is very light. And the overall impact of the site is also light compared to, say, a processing facility or some other manufacturing that would also be allowed within the zone. Those facilities could be allowed, or those uses could be allowed right up to the setback line, which is at the property line, so 0 setback. And this application has centralized the use within the site and backed away from the property line. Next slide, please. So another thing that we'd like to point out is you see a lot of green there. The project meets or exceeds all the relevant criteria within this zone in the development review application process or review criteria. But in terms of landscaping, the site has about 25% landscaping, and which far exceeds the code requirement. The perimeter is, as you can see in the landscape plan, which is a few slides later, we included those in the packet in case there are questions about any of those. But you can see that with the landscape plan, there are perimeter plantings to help buffer that from the adjacent properties, and not a specific requirement of the code. And interior landscaping within the parking facility also exceeds the landscape requirement. Another, next slide, please. There we go. So there's been a lot of discussion about noise within the appeal document. And the bottom line for the project is we have to comply with the municipal code. Staff talked about that in their presentation. We have done some initial acoustic measurements from our acoustical engineer. And what you see in front of you is results of those measurements. And the area along the south, there are some of those locations that exceed the minimum criteria already, noise criteria. The area along the north is less than the city and state DEQ standard, and the project will have to comply with the city and DEQ requirements for noise. And the Crane folks have committed to that. It's something that is specific in the municipal code, separate from the development code for the exact reason that was stated earlier. It is a continued compliance requirement, as opposed to something that happens at the time of land use approval. And so the team would be happy to, despite that, we'd be happy to receive a condition of approval that says we have to meet those city and DEQ code criteria. Something that we're going to be doing anyway. And if that is something that the Planning Commission would like to have as assurance, we're happy to entertain that. That's the main. Those are the main discussion points that I'd like to bring up. Happy to have to answer any questions, talk through anything on the remainder of the utility plans or landscape plans or what have you. If there are none, we can move to the architectural discussion, would be via Zoom. And we're
I think we'll reserve our questions for you till the end, unless any commissioner feels the need to speak up right now until the end of their presentation. So let's go ahead and move forward with your representatives on Zoom.
Great. Yeah, and while we're making that switch, I just want to maybe add one note that I am not an acoustical engineer. Don't play one on TV or otherwise. I always find this area to be one of the more confusing ones to understand. But when we're taking background measurements, this is what the site is today. It's a vacant property. There is no data center. There are no other facilities on it. And so we're just measuring what you can see in the background. And so this is usually traffic noise, railroad noise from other things that are already going on. And I believe we have some folks who can speak to this better than I can, but when levels already exceed the standards, when you are adding to them, if your level is below what's actually existing, then that meets the noise standards, at least as I understand it. And so I think that is part of when we're saying, look, some of these background standards already exceed the noise standards in the area. We believe, and we design, the Crane team does this when they are looking at data centers everywhere, because this is not the only area where noise is a concern. They are always looking at what the background is, what sort of the level is they need to design those facilities at, how they can mitigate those, and choosing equipment and orientations to get to where they need to go. So wanted to just add that bit.
Were those assumptions made with the assumption that those railroad tracks are in use?
I believe these are from actual measurements that were at the stake, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So did a train go by while they were making these? Looking at the numbers, I would imagine they did not. That would have been a pretty amazing coincidence if they measured those at the same time the train went by, but that's easily something we can confirm.
Let's move forward with your presentation.
All right, thanks.
Do we want to go to the next slide?
Yeah.
The one after that?
These slides are here in case something popped up that the commission would like to discuss.
There's my slide. My name is Connie Jong. I'm an architect with Page. Really excited to be part of this team. This project is intended to differentiate itself from the usual idea of a data center. A lot of projects in this typology don't focus on how they're perceived within the community, and we wanted to do something different, a little bit more interesting. So this project kind of looks at what it means to be part of a campus. Next slide, please. So as we were approaching this design, we took inspiration from cutting edge architecture in various markets, not just data centers. And this shape that you're looking at is meant to catch light at different angles and kind of give the building a dynamic presence, not be just a boring box. Next slide. So the areas surrounding the administrative offices are focused on bringing things down to a human scale and creating meaningful space for users. There will be a shared exterior courtyard for the campus, and this is a view looking west, standing from the main building entry of Building 1. So from an architectural perspective, we really tried to incorporate sculptural elements as a way to humanize the feel of these spaces. And what you're looking at here is a view of the interior main lobby. We wanted this to just feel like a place that celebrates technology and forward thinking. So thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you.
All right, I believe that concludes our presentation. Thanks again for the time tonight. Please let us know if you have any questions, and we'll try to direct it to the right person to answer them.
Great. I'll open it up first to my fellow commissioners. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, I have a few. Keeping in mind that we've all seen that, energy usage for the data center is paramount. And then you've made this presentation that, don't worry, we're going to use renewable power and it's not going to, have an effect on you, the residents of the city of Forest Grove, either as taxpayers or as fellow customers of Forest Grove Light and Power. Do I have that representation correct?
I think that Matt might be the right person to answer this one.
Yeah, so there's two aspects. So first of all, power is a really, really complicated system. Power rates are not driven by single users. It's driven off a wholesale market. It's a real-time auction, and it's obfuscated from each one of us that buys electricity. So it's called a supply imbalance market, which I could probably spend a few hours on this, but what it basically means is it's an aggregate of the demand and the supply, and it's basically bought and sold that way. What we're talking about today is the infrastructure, and so we're going to fund the infrastructure that our project needs, We may or may not collaborate with the city on what the city needs as far as the system as a whole. And so our project will not be subsidized by the city. So we will be paying for the infrastructure for our project.
And so if the city has to make infrastructure upgrades to its own system just to be able to support you and your business, you are going to front those costs. We're not
Correct.
going to front them
Correct.
as residents of Forest Grove,
Correct.
either from a taxpayer
Correct.
or a customer
Correct.
perspective.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We're investing, just to give you like quantum, we're discussing with FGLPA about millions of dollars of infrastructure improvements that we would pay.
Yeah, and we're very spoiled here in Forest Grove because you mentioned, oh, you won't have power outages. I've lived here for 8 years. I think the longest power outage we've had is 20 minutes in my entire time that I've lived here. And we pay lower than what all of the surrounding communities pay who are on other, power company systems. And so we feel pretty passionately about
Yes,
it.
yes. And you're honestly lucky to be served by Forest Grove Light and Power. They have a great team. They're experts at what they do, and they're here to serve the community. So absolutely agree with you there.
Another question I have is just, I'm seeing a lot of conflicting things in some of the appellant and kind of materials in support of the appellant that we've reviewed, and then you kind of contradicted yourself on the flip side. And these are two issues of employment versus traffic. On the one hand, those who oppose you are saying it's not going to bring any real jobs here to Forest Grove, but it's going to make our traffic get out of control. And on the other hand, you're saying we're going to bring good jobs, but we're going to have a light impact on traffic in the surrounding areas.
Right.
To me, those don't seem to really go hand in hand. Can you explain it a little?
Absolutely. So we are absolutely not building a manufacturing plant, which would cause to the south of us is DTM, right? So it's effectively a manufacturing facility. My understanding is hundreds and hundreds of jobs. That's not what we're talking about developing. Data centers generally use tens of jobs, meaning on this campus, it'll be south of 100. So it's not hundreds of jobs. Data centers don't run themselves. We absolutely need people engineers to operate, observe the servers, observe the MEP systems, and maintain them over decades. And so we absolutely will have those people on staff. It's also a 24/7 facility. But when we say light impact to roads, it means that we're not talking about the alternative uses, right? So if we weren't building a data center, we're not keeping a field here. It would be something that would be hundreds and hundreds of jobs, which will cause significant traffic. So what I was trying to distinguish there was not that there will be zero impact to traffic. It's that we will have very light impact to traffic.
And what about the non-job traffic?
The what?
And I'll clarify. I'm asking things very much like a layperson question about
sure.
data centers.
Yeah.
I do think you did a good job of explaining what you do there and why this is something that we need as a society to function. Whether we need it here is another question. So along the lines of traffic impact, we're talking about employees coming and going. But does a data center have semi-trucks full of things coming in and out every day? What kind of sort of industrial traffic is involved there?
Yeah, good question. So I also didn't mention during construction, there will be a lot more jobs. So, we need electricians and plumbers and, there will be more activity on the front end. So during that period of time, which will last about a year, a little bit more, there will be traffic there. So I want to clarify that piece. The other piece to your question around, the actual other traffic, generally what happens is, so we build a building, we lease it out to end customers. Those end customers have deliveries of servers. We don't touch those servers, but they're obviously installed within the facility. Those tend to be installed once every 5 years or so. So the useful life of a server is generally, on the 5 to 7 year. 7 is stretching it and depends on the type of server, but you can say roughly every 5 years there'll be, batches of servers. And it also depends on, the tenant and how quickly they grow their fleet of servers. But it's not like an everyday type of thing.
And if I can add one more thing, we also, as part of the original application that you guys have somewhere in the giant stack of paper I'm sure you've been given, we did, as part of the initial application, conduct a traffic impact analysis. And as I'm sure staff can further speak to, there was not a level of traffic that was expected to be generated or a level of traffic impacts from this facility that warranted further study or any other traffic mitigation. So that's also in the record for you guys to review.
Right, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
If I have a question that we address to them,
Go ahead and ask it now while we have the applicant at the mic, and then if there are parts that we can have Power and Light weigh in on, we'll do so.
absolutely. And I apologize. I'm also a layperson, but if I'm trying to understand from an energy perspective, like how much power the average household uses, is it like a kilowatt a day? Is it 25 or so kilowatt hours a day per house? That's a number I saw online. I don't know if that's
I think it depends on quite a few factors.
that was important.
Yeah, so I mean, it probably depends on the size of that house, how energy efficient it is, et cetera. I actually am not a residential expert, so I would not want to.
And that was not for you, but
Yeah.
do you? Is there a way to quantify? And I know that you were the builder, not the tenant, but the kind of yearly kilowatt hour consumption of power, or daily or monthly, of a data center of this size?
It will. So we have not leased this facility yet, so it will really depend on who the end tenant is. I will say there are some data centers that get leased and tenants move in very, very slowly. Other tenants, they run, they push their gear in right away. We anticipate that that will happen over time. We're not planning on leasing it all to one customer unless somebody says that that's what they want. So to your question, so it'll be in the megawatts, not kilowatts. And generally how energy usage works for data centers, a lot of people say, okay, it's going to be flat over time. There is actually fluctuations depending on the workloads that they're using. And so unfortunately, it will absolutely depend on what the workloads of that end customer are. But you can measure this in a number of megawatts on average over time. What we're anticipating, I think what we've modeled is something around 5 megawatts on average in the first year. So that's sort of the number that we had in mind. There's broad assumptions, based on that, based on what we think customer behavior is going to be, but that's generally what we're thinking.
The assumption is 5 megawatts a year, kind of, with a lot of variables.
In the first year, and then we anticipate that will grow over time, depending on customer usage. If you look at how most customers operate, they basically move in batches, and they grow as they need to grow. We've done a lot of coordination with Forest Grove Light and Power on sort of predicted load ramps, and that's why we're confident in the power situation. Again, not a condition for land use approval, but it is something that, as data center developers, we're always very, very focused on whether the system can handle the load, because otherwise we wouldn't be spending all this time and effort on doing what we're doing here.
So the other half of my question will be for the city. But
Okay.
Just follow up on that.
Sure.
The 5 megawatts that you talked about for the first year, what capacity level would you expect?
Sorry, when you say, what do you mean by capacity level?
What percentage of full?
Oh, got it. So the first building is designed for 24 megawatts, and so it's roughly 1/5 of that. Yeah.
And unless you had a follow-up, I believe Commissioner Culbertson on Zoom has a question.
Thank you, Commissioner. Apologies for not being there again. But I wanted to inquire about why Forest Grove. What drew you to the community relative to development? I have some assumptions.
Yeah.
But I was just hoping to hear from you.
Yeah, no, good question. So we obviously, we're looking at land all over the Portland area. So We were focused on Portland because the grid is really very, very renewable. So as I think probably most of you understand, the whole grid, whether it's PGE or Forest Grove Light and Power, the upstream provider is BPA, which is underpinned by hydro. And so that's by and large carbon neutral, and they have resources coming online. There's solar and wind as well. So that's a big part of it. When we looked at, Hillsborough, we spent a lot of time on both Hillsborough and Forest Grove. We spent a lot of time talking to both cities, and, honestly, Forest Grove struck us as a more welcoming community. Hillsborough is sort of like a machine, where we were just one of many projects. And so that was a piece of it. The other thing is, this piece of land, it's sort of oddly shaped, but it could accommodate multiple buildings. So that was another piece of the puzzle. We wanted to have a place that, we could grow slowly over time and accommodate multiple buildings. So those are the high level things that we looked at. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Those are the big things.
Okay, thank you for answering that.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you for your transparency.
Yeah.
I have another question just regard, and so I don't know if these figures are exactly accurate, so please feel free to push back. But I was curious and wondering about production of megawatt hours within the metro kind of Hillsborough fiber optic periphery. What I could find, just searching just now, was 200, somewhere around 228 megawatt hours. Does that seem accurate?
Sorry, what was that number representative of?
The amount of megawatts generated within the area.
Most of the power is actually not generated within either Hillsborough or Forest Grove. It's generated outside of the Portland area. So most generation is actually up in Washington through the dams. Just that number sounds very, very small to me. My understanding, for example, of the entire PGE system is something like 4 gigawatts. And they're increasing that by another 3 to 4 gigawatts. So you're talking about probably 8 gigawatts, and most of that system being in Portland specifically. So the generation should be much, much higher than that number.
All right, thank you. Well, and I'm pulling this from an article, recent article from Commercial Property Executive. And so I was just, thinking, given the use of the light industrial, if the megawatt generation within the Hillsborough kind of Portland metro area stands at around that megawatt number that I previously provided, 50 megawatts seems like a significant portion of that generation. And so I'm kind of wondering about light industrial versus what would be industrial for a building of 300,000 square feet or 35 acres.
You mentioned 50 megawatts. What was that number? I'm sorry?
Yeah, it says here that the project will deliver 50 megawatts upon completion.
Is that for a new natural gas plant or something like that?
Oh, excuse me. Well, I'm reading here data center dynamics, and I'm not trying to. I know this is spot on, in terms of. I'm not trying to get you with a catch you situation when you don't even have this article in front of you, but I just put in a quick search for Crane data centers in Portland.
Yep.
And I was just kind of looking to figure out what portion of this center in Forest Grove relative to comparable data centers within the region would either consume energy wise or oh gosh, sorry, a little muddled. I'm new on the planning commission, but I hope you can kind of glean my attempt here at trying to figure out what percentage this data center holds within the development of, 100 plus megawatt data center in the area.
So the I think maybe where you're going, and just if I'm off base here, like let me know. If you were to look at the potential load that the first phase of this project will be compared to like Hillsborough. If you were to drive around Hillsborough, there's hundreds and hundreds of megawatts of data centers already in existence and being built. So it's quite small actually compared to the other area that we looked at extensively. But as part of the system as a whole, even if you include those other data centers, it's a fraction of the whole system. The system as a whole is much, much larger.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any further questions?
I have a quick question. So you talk about local jobs at the front end and with development and everything. So do you have a special procedure that you follow to make sure that the jobs are local, like that you hire local contractors?
Yeah, so we've actually already hired a local, not local to Forest Grove, but our general contractor is based in Portland. It's Fortis. They actually have a representative here tonight. They're based in the Portland area. They actually have employees in Forest Grove. So that's on the construction side. When the building is online, we actually have a requirement that as part of the agreement with the city to source jobs here locally first. So, we'll be looking for general managers, we'll be looking for electricians, basically MEP specialists, as well as security, ongoing operations. And our preference is to hire people locally. It's better if we can find people that don't have to hit traffic on the way to work. So that is part of the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any further questions? All right, thank you so much. We will now hear from the appellant. I'd now like to invite the appellant or appellant's representative to come to the center table to present the appeal issues. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ken Dobson. I'm an attorney. My address is 324 South Abernathy Street in Portland, Oregon, and I am here on behalf of the appellant tonight. I did submit some written comments today addressing the applicable approval criteria and explaining why the applicant has not demonstrated compliance with a number of key requirements. First of all, I'll acknowledge that this is a site development review, and it is under the Development Code, Section 17.2.40. And that's where we start getting into trouble with the development codes in the first instance, in that these requirements require the applicant to submit site plans, show where the buildings are, show where the setbacks are, show where parking areas are, mechanical storage areas. And they did that, but the maps, have you seen, there's a big blank spot on the map of the site, and that's where they plan on putting in the substation, the power that will make this thing go, the heart of the beast, so to speak. And they say, well, we'll deal with what goes on that pad, this area, in a separate application. Now, sometimes you can do that. If you had a PUD, you can do it in phased developments where there's separate applications. But being in this case, the issue of power is so central to the operations of this facility, we really need more information on how this thing's going to get powered, what's that substation going to look like, how are the utility lines going to come in here? Because what happens when they get to the phase where they're actually permitting the power station, that could affect the site layout. Now, you look at this map, and it's a pretty tight site layout. When you've got the two big buildings, you've got the pad for the power station, there's not much room left. So, for instance, if they get into some kind of regulatory hurdle in the next phase of it that requires them to make modifications, maybe a bigger station, different access, there's talk about these electromagnetic fields. What if they have to create a buffer for that? We don't know all this. So at this point, we do not know if the site plan that has been submitted for the two buildings showing the parking areas and the machinery storage areas and the entrances and the exits, emergency egress, we do not know at this point if that is going to be accurate. So I think a better approach in this situation is to say, figure out how you're going to power this thing, Show us where it's going to be on this map, because that can ultimately affect the site layout. So I think under the basic site development review requirements under 17.2440, you can find that the staff had erred in doing the administrative approval in the absence of all this information that we need about the electrical system. And today I heard for the first time, I don't know if you've heard of this for the first time, they're not planning on using water to cool this. They're saying, oh, we'll just use an air cooling system. That's the first I've heard of it. We haven't looked at this. We don't know if it's feasible to use it instead of water. If they are using air instead of water to cool this, will this require additional space needs? I mean, where's this hot air going to go after it? So I just don't think they can come in here and say, well, magically convert this from a water-based cooling system to an air-based cooling system and not have us sit back and say, wait a minute, how is this going to affect the site layout? Are you going to need a bigger building? Are you going to need a smaller building? Are you going to have machinery outside, vents, pumps, fans? Where is this air cooling system going to be located, and how will it affect the site plan? Because the site plan was submitted and reviewed and approved based on the idea that they're going to cool it with water. Now, at this meeting, they say, oh, we're not going to use water, we're going to use air. I think that should cause pause and to say, wait, explain again how you're going to cool this with air, and how is that going to affect the site design, what we're here to review. Without this information, it really is premature to approve the site design. So that's just to go back to what staff said, the question was asked, what if you don't get water? What if you don't get the necessary power to run this thing? And staff said, well, that will send them back to the drawing board. Well, they've already submitted their drawings, and if there's a possibility that it's going to go back to the drawing board, it really is too early in the process to approve the site layout like they want us to do. The second point we raise in the written submissions is the conditions of approval. So staff had put in all these conditions of approval, pages and pages and pages of them. And one of them that I pointed out was it's an engineering condition of approval number 70. And that's, it says that water used in conjunction with the construction of the project shall be obtained only from a pre-approved source. In my submissions, which was based on the idea that they would need water, we argue, well, yeah, you can have a condition of approval, but under established case law here in Oregon, conditions of approval must be demonstrated that they're feasible, that they're likely to succeed. And when compliance with the condition of approval is uncertain, and we cite the case law in my submissions, you have to either put it on hold, deny the application, or allow the applicant to make more certain whether or not they can comply with the condition of approval. Now, I'll still say that there's a real question about whether or not they can get this water, and it's still relevant because they haven't demonstrated that the alternative using air cooling is feasible. This is the first we've heard about it. We don't know if it's going to work. I understand, and we've cited some background articles about the water usage of these facilities. They typically use 300,000 gallons of water per day to cool these things. So if you're going to switch to some kind of air system, you really need to show that's feasible, that they're not going to need water. If they can't show that an air system is feasible, then they have to show compliance with the engineering condition approval number 70 about obtaining water from a pre-approved source. So again, it's another reason why you can deny this application, in that they have not shown that compliance with these conditions of approval are feasible. We just can't say, okay, we trust you, you have to show it, and that's what the case law says. The other code provisions that I've cited that I think there's problems with, go back to the water thing. There's a couple of provisions of the applicable code. This is Development Code 17.8.630 and then 17.8.625. 630 says that you have to show that the existing public water supplies are sufficient to run this facility, that they can do it in a safe manner that won't overburden the existing water system. Again, they say now, well, they didn't offer any evidence in their original application showing that the 300,000 gallons a day to run this thing would not overburden the system. Now they say it's air. Again, I think if they're going to say we're not going to use water, we're going to use air, let's see it. Yeah, show us, don't tell us. And then we can decide whether or not the existing water system, the water supply system, is capable of supplying the water needs. Also, this is a big issue I raised in my submissions, that the applicant now is taking the position as irrelevant because they're going to use an air system, is what are you going to do with all that? So assuming for a moment that they can't figure out an air system to cool this. I mean, that's the first, they can have the opportunity to put the application on hold and submit that so we can see what they're talking about. But let's assume for the moment that they can't do that. The technology isn't available or would require even more power to power these air, and they just can't get the power. So just assume for a moment that they do need to get water. Then the question becomes, where does that water go? And under Forest Grove Development Code 17.8.625, there is a requirement that you cannot overload the system. Often with processed water in manufacturing facilities, they'll dump it into the sewer. You can get a permit to do that. But if they were planning on $300,000 water, what comes in has to come out. So I don't know what they were planning on doing with the water. So again, assuming they can't demonstrate that an air-cooled system is feasible, they're going to have to explain what are they going to do with that 300,000 gallons of processed water every day. Does it evaporate? And it's heated water too. So again, we need more information to see if they actually comply with those two sections of the development code, which are applicable approval criteria and were discussed in the staff report. There's also the Forest Grove Development Code 17.3, switching gears here a little bit, 540, and that says that no land or structure in the light industrial zones shall be occupied unless there's continuing compliance with the standards set forth with the EPA, the Department of Environmental Quality and Metro relative to noise, and in this case, heat also. That's specifically mentioned. So they have to show compliance. It's the applicant's burden of proof to show compliance that they will comply with the DEQ rules and regarding heat and noise. We'll talk about noise first. There's a specific provision of the Oregon Administrative Rules. I've cited it here, and it says that no person owning or controlling a new industrial commercial use can generate noise in excess of, and they have a table and they show what they need to comply with. I don't have that table in front of me, but I do know that data centers are really noisy, and they've been known to produce up to 98 decibels of sound, and that's equivalent to a train horn, train air horn, or an industrial alarm. So, and now they're saying they're going to add more fans, so we assume that's going to increase the noise levels considerably if they're going to be using fans instead of water to heat it. So again, it's the applicant's burden to show that they're going to meet those standards. And they say, well, you can give us a condition of approval that will comply with it. But again, they have to show that a condition of approval is feasible. And so far, all we have seen from them on how they're going to comply with the noise standard is they say they use the term designing noise generating machinery. Yeah, we know it's going to be noise generating machinery, but I'm not sure what they mean by that. And today in their presentation, they talked about hiring a sound engineer, but we don't know what they're going to do. So I think you have the authority, you have the discretion to say, we're not going to approve this application until you show us how you're going to meet those standards. Just don't tell us, show us, and that's their burden. So you have the discretion to deny the application based on the noise thing. So there's a few other things I put in here. One is, well, anyway, I'll let you read it, but there's the buffering standards and screening standards under section 17.8.425. The applicant said that this doesn't apply because we're not abutting a residential zone, but they are abutting residences that are non-conforming uses in an industrial zone. And that particular set of statutes applies where there are housing units. It's not limited to properties that are zoned residences. As long as there are residences, they have to comply with the screening and buffering standards of the Development Code 17.8.425. But I think, and it's pretty apparent that the applicant really doesn't know how they're going to get the power. They've said they're going to air cool it. They haven't shown us how they're going to do it. Until they can explain how they're going to run this thing and what that machinery is going to look like and where the power lines are going to be and are they going to use processed water? Are they not going to use processed water? If they use processed water, where's it going to go? I've cited enough of the provisions of the Development Code that gives you the discretion to deny this application based on the incomplete information before us. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Commissioners, any questions? When you say you've cited to the code provisions, is that in the actual signed appeal that was in our materials, or are you talking about supplementary material you
This would
provided?
be, yes, thank you. This is a de novo appeal. It's my understanding it's de novo. No, most of the code provisions I've cited were not in the original applicant packet that was prepared pro se. So I've had a chance to go through the code and kind of come up with additional arguments that have been submitted into the record in my written submissions today.
Understood. I just ask because a lot of your argument seems to be based on their new information about the air-cooled system, and you want to revert back to, well, they might not be able to do that, so let's talk about the water cooling again. And yet you are also submitting new arguments that you want us to take at face value at this time, you know, rather than go back and say, no, we're going to ignore that and look at the original appeal.
Ultimately, it's the applicant's burden. The appellant doesn't have a burden of proof. Well, we could show that it was improperly done, but ultimately, we say they haven't met their burden of proof. It's their burden of proof. If they're going to come in here and just say, we're going to magically make the water issue go away by air cooling, they have an obligation to explain how that's going to be done. How is it going to affect the site layout? Because that's ultimately what we're looking at today is the site layout. It's one of the things you're looking at. But without knowing how they're going to power this, without knowing how they're going to cool it, we can't sit here and say that this is going to be the final site development. Give them some more time. Let them put it together. But I think based on the record today, they just haven't demonstrated they haven't met their burden to demonstrate that the applicable approval criteria.
How, if they change the site development plan based on, you know, kind of working through this process, as you've described, won't they have to obtain additional approval of the new site development plan?
Oh, I'll leave that up to the city attorney to discuss. I wasn't prepared to address that today. But I think you have the discretion to, again, that's a question, there's a time period for getting an approval of the land use application. And the applicant might want to extend that. But yeah, I would think that they would have to resubmit. They're going to redo the site plan and explain how they're going to power this. It shouldn't be done in a 7-day period following this hearing. It should be, let's go back, explain it. Let's take the time to look at it. Give the public time to look at it and comment. Give your staff time to comment. I don't think it should be rushed through in a 777.
Any further questions?
Well, based on what I've read, my understanding is that it's not just, they're doing the site development plan, but also there's conditions that they're going to have to meet in order for it to move forward. So are you saying that those conditions aren't appropriate, or?
No, the conditions are appropriate, but under the case law, it's the applicant's burden to show that compliance with those conditions of approval are feasible. When they say, just trust us, we'll comply with the noise standard, they need to do something more than that. They have to demonstrate that compliance with a condition of approval is feasible. If they cannot show that, then you can't really use conditions of approval to defer determining whether or not this meets the letter of the law.
Further questions? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I will now ask for comments from persons in favor of the proposal. And staff, has anyone signed up, or is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak in favor of the proposal? I have here a public hearing sign-up sheet in support. When I call you, I'll first call people who've signed up in person, and then I'll call for people on Zoom. Please come up to the center table and state your name and address for the record. This is Bill Tritz, if I'm reading that correctly. I should say that just due to the late hour and how many people we have here, I'm going to roughly limit you to 3 minutes each. I'm not going to set a timer because I think that's disruptive, but at around 3 minutes going on the clock behind you, I'll ask you to kind of wrap up the thought you're currently expressing.
All right, thank you, Councilperson. My name is Bill Tritz. I live at 3406 17th Avenue here in Forest Grove. I've lived here since '95, so I do consider myself a Forest Grove person. The other thing I want to bring forward is my qualifications. I, back in the 2000s, designed and built several data centers. I've been in the IT business for about 30 years, so we can't live without the IT business. We've talked about that earlier today. I think what we have in front of us is an opportunity to kind of choose our poison. We know this land is not going to remain empty fields forever. We can't, or I live very close to this area, and I really don't want it to be a substance abuse fixing center or homeless camps or something along those lines. Data centers are a win-win-win proposition. They're very low impact on traffic. They do provide good jobs. The sound problems that in yesteryear used to exist don't really exist anymore. And the attorney did nothing but try to sow fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But I think staff indicated that the things that he's demanding that the contractor try to prove up front aren't required until later in the process. And to try to require a developer to provide all of this information up front is nothing but stalling and trying to add cost to the issue. So I'm going to try and stay within my 3 minutes, but thank you all. I think that this is a good addition to our court. Provide good jobs and bring some of that technology into our environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak in favor of the proposal? Seeing none, I will just make a brief comment to my fellow commissioners. I'm not going to pause after every speaker and ask if you have questions. If you do have a question for a specific speaker, just call my attention to it and we'll give you an opportunity to ask it. All right, I will now ask for comments from persons in opposition to the proposal. I have the sign-up sheet from staff here in the auditorium, and we will also give people on Zoom an opportunity to speak in opposition of the proposal. Please come up to the center table and state your name and address for the record when I call your name. Mark, is it Hayworth? And I apologize in advance for my attempts to read all of your handwriting.
I say Hayworth, so everybody spells it with a Y, but it's actually spelled with a W, and that's the way my grandma told me to have it spelled.
Can you state your address for us real quick?
Yes, my name is Mark Hayworth. My mailing address is P.O. Box 483, Sherwood, Oregon. We're currently building a home, so I'm homeless right now. Thank you very much for providing time for this public comment. I'm voicing my opposition to this going forward. Given the time permitted for this type of comment, I'll speak to just a few issues today. It's noted that Crane Company, a San Francisco company, indicates on its website what it considers to be very important to them, a mission statement, if you will. In their order of importance, they value their clients, their employees, their partners, and the environment. Environment is fourth, and nowhere is it a good neighbor policy. The local communities or the long-term financial effects on homeowners nearby is not considered in their calculation. Maybe as a solution, I just offer this off the top of my head, the homeowners that are affected get appraisals before and after the building of the project. And then the company makes up the difference because that's where it hits home. As information is light on details of this project, I have several questions. In exchange for what's rumored to be favorable tax breaks, I don't know if there are. That's a question that I have for you. Will the Planning Commission, City Council, Mayor, or anyone explain how this benefits the citizens of Forest Grove? Of importance, taxpayers. Any money not collected is money missed or not part of the city's budget, and therefore puts pressure on local taxpayers, property owners. In following other projects similar to this, it is not uncommon for contributions to local schools, city infrastructure, etc., to be negotiated by those in your seats. Maybe in a non-derogatory tone, I ask, do we need to follow the money? This project is touted in many areas as a sustainable project, indeed on their website. Notably, other very large data center builders, for instance, Equinix, perhaps Crane's competitor, has defined extensively what they do to be sustainable. Page after page after page of what they consider to be sustainable. In the world of data center construction, a common definition for that is, quote, embrace responsible hardware disposal and recycling, reducing the generation of electronic waste, and minimizing environmental impact.
And I'll just say you've hit your 3 minutes, so if you could wrap it up.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No problem, thank you.
If Crane has created a roadmap for complying to this transparent to the community, we would like to see it. A very good friend of mine is project manager for the grid building for data centers in Hillsboro, Oregon, Seattle, etc. I asked him, put this in some sort of common way. How much power are we really talking about? On their website, I believe they have proposed this to be a 50 to 100 megawatt facility. Now, how much that is all dependent on the voltage. I have 120 volts coming out of my wall, 220 coming to the house. This voltage is in the thousands. So, in layman's terms, if you took the average wattage consumed by a home in America, this facility will consume the equivalent of 2,000 to 3,000 homes. They can prove me wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Hayworth.
All
Next up, Nancy Rogers.
My name is Nancy Rogers. I live at 4100 Beaver Way, and I live in one of the houses that's in a housing project that was built 45 years ago, along with the houses along 19th Avenue. And we're zoned single family homes. And then this portion over there turns out to be zoned for commercial. And I don't understand. I mean, when you drive around, most housing places aren't butted up against commercial. There's some big streets or something that separates them, and that's of concern to me. And the noise. We have another industrial building that's very far away in the middle of the night. You can hear them. And sometimes people go there and ask them to repair things because they're so noisy.
Can you really quickly state your address for the record?
4100 Beaver Way.
And thank you. All right, Sherry Weber. Okay. David Hayworth.
Madam Chair, just a note that David Hayworth is the appellant, and so he should not be limited to just 3 minutes.
Are you the appellant, sir?
Yes.
Okay, so you've already had your comments addressed through your representative who had unlimited time.
Pardon me?
Your attorney already spoke on your behalf is the issue.
I have 3 minutes to speak.
You already had time through your attorney as the appellant is the issue.
Oh, come on. Really? I filed an appeal. I was told that I would get 3 minutes to speak. I was told by this young lady over here to sign up.
Did
now,
you know that
if I knew this, I would have questioned my own attorney for 10 minutes.
Please have your seat. We're trying to follow the rules of procedure here. And as the appellant, you've already had your say through your representative. You could have come up with your attorney. That's not how it works. He already had more than 3 minutes at the time his counsel was up here.
Yes.
There you go.
This is unfair. This whole thing is unfair. Excuse me. I live right here. And I bought that house in 2010, and I knew it was on a light industrial zone. But at that time, a light industrial zone, and it's still defined this way today, this issue has already been addressed by the state of Oregon. And in their definition of a light industrial zone, partially as follows, in their own words. A light industrial classification provides land for low-intensity industrial uses such as light manufacturing, warehousing, processing, and distribution of goods. These uses are intended to involve low levels of noise, low levels of vibration, air pollution, radiation, glare, fire, and explosive hazards. The light industrial classification also aims to implement the comprehensive plan and provide enough land for other types of manufacturing that can be permitted near residential areas. This building right here is 75 feet tall. It's the size of the Titanic. It's 750 feet long. I have a drone. I walked out my backyard and I sent my drone out 122 feet into that field and up 75 feet. That's where the top of the building is. Right there. I will have no sky. My house will be in perpetual shade. Perpetual shade. That's intrusive. It'll be in perpetual light at night because of the floodlights and lighting and oh, the noise. This data center has no resemblance to what the state of Oregon has already determined is fair to be in a data center. You admit yourself, at the time the statute was written, data centers didn't exist. Information was a call center. This is intrusive. This is terrible. To have this noise 24/7, 7 days a week, for the rest of my life.
We've given you your 3 minutes. It's up.
All right. Well, my wife and I are scared to death. And I think if you people appreciate and approve that. These are all houses. All these houses here were not on the map the city sent out for this.
Mr.
It was
Hayworth,
just
you're
blank.
not helping your cause. Please have a seat.
Okay.
Maureen Murphy. Thank you. If you could please state your name and address for the record.
I'm not good at speaking, but I don't want this building for several reasons. Maureen Murphy, 1812 Tamarack Way. I'm going to be right behind that building. It's going to be smack in front of me. I don't think you're thinking you're building a huge complex with many buildings that are huge in the flight of geese, migrating geese that fly over my house. I love to see them migrating geese fly over my house. That is a migrating path for geese. And I don't think you thought about the ecosystem of the wetlands is going to be the left of the building and the future damage to the local environment and the animal life that is around that area. And the amount of noise is going to affect animals. It's going to affect us. I like to hear the trains go by, but I don't want the sound of a train going by my house 24/7, every day, 24 hours a day. And 20 feet, so this building is going to be 20 feet in front of my house. 20 feet is not that far. That's not enough green barrier between that 75-foot building and my house. There is Merrick's behind my house, but it is way far away. So I don't hear the noise of the Merrick's building because it's way far away from me. And you've already talked about the water they would use if it used water. And the amount of electricity, I think it's going to use more power than Forest Grove has. And other than construction, I don't think there's going to be a lot of jobs. There's a school, there's Neil Armstrong School right there by this building. The traffic with the added traffic by the school, I don't think is really good. I just think that I just think the noise will not only affect the residents, but it's going to affect the animals. It's going to affect the wetland, the animals that are very close to the wetlands. The noise is never going to stop. With the wetlands, the flight paths of the geese, the amount of water, power, the lack of greenway, the nonstop noise, like a train, and being so very close to residentials on all sides, I think it is a very, very poised of location, and I think there's other places that could be used that will not greatly affect all the things around us, the animals, us, the wetlands. I just think there's probably a lot better places that don't have, just not going to affect all these things that I think it's going to affect. And yes, and I'm not going to have no sun because I'm going to have a great big 75 building right behind my house.
Thank you.
And I like the sun.
Skylar Skipworth. You could state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Skylar Skipworth. My address is 1803 Hawthorne Street. And I come here because I was actually excited about the data center. I have been involved in the tech industry for about 14 years. I'm finishing up college right now for my education I got. And I heard about it. Like, that's amazing. It's not exactly what I thought it would be. Like they were stating, it could start off with a couple hundred jobs, and then it could drop down to a couple dozen. That's not enough to make a positive impact on the community. And I wouldn't want to be one of the lucky few to show up to work when everyone else is upset that that building's there. You know what I mean? I was offered a job at a data center in a different location, and it was $24 an hour. That doesn't even qualify for a studio apartment in this town. They said the position was temporary for about 6 months while the buildup happened. And if I got lucky, I could be a janitor. So that's where I stand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Hurley.
Good evening. My name is Brian Hurley. I live at 1719 Fir Road in Forest Grove. I was wondering this morning how to begin this statement. It came to me on the morning news. Record temps this week, Wednesday and Thursday, 100, 101 degrees. Near record temperatures, I thought to myself, yes, 35.07 acres of grass, weeds, and trees. Yes, 101. 35.07 acres of concrete, blacktop, steel, more like 110. This facility is large enough to require its own electrical substation to operate. Is this really sustainable for our community? No. While we wait for the power to run it, what of our current energy needs? I can't remember the last power outage we had. Forest Grove Light and Power does an exceptional job of keeping us up and running. Blackouts, brownouts, power spikes, ruined electronic equipment due to a lack of ability to feed the power-hungry giant. Water usage, gray water has been mentioned. Now we're going to have air cooling. Even worse, louder, maybe less expensive for them. But now this 58 decibels is going to be closer to the 80 maximum. Average data center is between 92 and 96 decibels of sound. That's continuous, nonstop, like a voice in your head, continuously, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, 24/7, never ends. 80 decibels. How are we going to monitor and enforce such a regulation? Are they going to be self-regulating? Probably not. Another company near this site already exceeds this level on a regular basis. Although this new proposal will drown out the existing noise, it will only be louder and closer to our homes. The wildlife, we are simply going to grade and backfill the several small wetlands on the site. What of the geese and other wildlife that currently make this proposed site home? Our property values will decrease substantially from this unwanted and unnecessary intrusion. If our roles were reversed here and you were sitting where I am today, you would have nothing to fear, because I could not, with any clear conscience, subject you or your families to such a fate. No Forest Grove Data Center.
Thank you. Marianne Villarreal. Can you state your name and address, please?
Marianne Villarreal, and I live at 3507 16th Place. I'm right on the corner of Popular and 16th, where they say there's no traffic, but I've got traffic 24/7. I've got where they came and put power lines underground. I asked your power light guy, is there going to be radiation coming off of that? What are those new things up there on the power pole? Am I being subjected to more radiation? And he says, no, you'll be fine. With this thing coming in, I don't think I'm going to be safe. The price of my house is going to go down. The traffic is going to be horrendous with any more traffic that's already there. I already work with TTM. We've had several kids come near to being run over. Accidents in the middle of the night, people trying to cross the road there. There is no flashing light. There is no light. The traffic is horrendous. Unless you actually live there off of 47, you're not going to know. The accidents that happen down the road, they're awful. Life flight after life flight in the last 13 years that I've been here. That building shouldn't be near any kids. It's going to be putting out air pollution, radiation that's going to be coming through our neighborhoods through the electrical lines. So, hey, yeah, put it over in my neighborhood. How about if I put it near one of your homes? Okay? I'm already being subjected to what's been going on with the new apartments. No to the data center. I think we've had enough with TTM.
Thank you. Julio Villarreal.
Hi, panel. My name is Julio Villarreal. I live at 3507 16th Place. I bought my house, my property in 2003, and there's a lot of traffic going on, a lot of cables underground going on. The traffic is terrible. It's just getting worse and worse. So I don't know about this building, what effect it's going to have on the neighborhood. I don't know about the children, what effect it's going to have on it. I live on 16th and Popular, and where the railroad tracks it's only like not too far from there. And the building that they're trying to build, we can see the land itself. But I'm worried about if the taxes are going to go up, electricity is going to go up, or the property value is going down. I don't have no knowledge as of right now, so I don't know what's going to happen. And I wish the traffic, I don't know how it's gonna work. They say something about extending Heather Street, and I don't know if the traffic's gonna come through Popular or where else, because TTM, they're running trailers, the clean water is going through there. It seemed like there's no end to noise. The noise is terrible. I'm 74 years old, and I can't handle traffic nowadays. You know, I want to sleep, but the traffic is so bad there that it wakes me up. There's certain hours on Highway 47 that the noise gets pretty loud, and then it slows down, and then it comes back on again in the evening, or like about 3:30, something like that. It's just getting worse and worse. Pacific Highway, it's getting worse, man. It's just like the freeway at certain times. It takes about 20 minutes, 25 minutes to get from Forest Grove to Cornelius. So I can imagine I'm just visioning it, how the traffic's gonna be to get in and out of my house into the traffic. So I don't know. I hope they can straighten this out before they put it up, and I hope you panel can really think about all this stuff and be concerned about the citizens and the neighborhood that are close, that are going to be close to that building. So we don't know the outcome. They don't say too much. They say this and they say that, but I don't know what's going to happen. So I hope you look into it this deeper and deeper, so the neighborhood can say, okay, that sounds pretty safe. But right now, as it looks, I don't think so, man. So if it gets worse, I'm going to sell my house and get out of Dodge, because I don't want to be there anymore after this if something really serious happens, you know. The outage comes out, TTM, the lights go off at times, and they last between 5 to 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more. And it's been going on for 16 years. And they don't do nothing about it. They don't tell us, well, we're going to fix it, we're going to do something about it, so there won't be a short in the light, the electricity. And it's been going on for 16 years. So I thought I was going to get used to it, but it's just not getting any better, you know. So I don't know what Forest Grove can do about it, but they're building houses on Highway 47 going across to McMean.
And we are at time for you, so if you could wrap it up, we do appreciate your comments.
Who's speaking? Huh?
Thank you so much. Taylor Elwes.
Hi, my name's Taylor Elwes. I live at 1774 Mountain View Lane, so my property is butting up right against all of this. I actually just got a photo from my neighbor's property that I like to show to everyone. It's during the rainy season, our neighbors had also butt up against it, and the water is so deep that ducks are swimming. And I'll show this to Crane too. I'm not sure if you guys have been there during the rainy season or not, but it does flood quite a bit. Ducks do swim. We have a lot of geese flying every year too, thousands of them. So my original concern, and my husband's original concern, was the water drainage. We already have a really big issue during the rainy season. We have 2 sump pumps running any time it's raining, just to keep it from going underneath our crawl space. Back in the 90s, when my in-laws lived there, they had flooding, and this is in one of my online submissions as well, but FEMA said that it was a flood zone technically. The maps currently don't show that, but I think that's something to look into, just given the amount of water and the issues that everyone there on the road has with drainage. I also wrote up some stuff, and this is in my online submission as well, but I'm really disappointed in how the city has handled this. We dealt with Kate McGuire quite a bit, and she was really dismissive with this entire thing. We were really upset that only houses within 300 feet of the property were sent notices. This really does affect the entire town. And I read online, you guys have the option to elevate the application level so that we can do this. We took it on the public hearing months ago when this first got rolling, and it's at the city planner's discretion, and that didn't happen. I think that's really unfair to to the town. The maps sent out of the plans keep changing. On one of them, there's an administrative building. On one, there's not. Everything is flip-flopping, and we hear what their answers to. They can't give us straight answers about half this stuff. They're talking about cooling with water first, now it's air, we just don't know. Going back to the former city planner, she also gave out some misleading information about the submission times. When my husband called to inquire about everything, she said that it wasn't a hard deadline, and we did submit our comments on time, so we were able to work on the appeal with Dave and Darcy and everyone. But I'm wondering how many people reached out to Kate, and she said, oh, it's not a hard deadline, you'll have a week past because I don't meet with Crane yet. And then they ended up too late, and they have no voice essentially at that point. The other thing, talking to her about the water drainage issues, she said she couldn't help us with any of that, reach out to Crane, and I know you guys have like 10 employees or whatever, but it took over 2 weeks of my husband calling day in, day out, multiple times a day, emailing to get any sort of response. 3 and 4 times a day, he says. So it took quite a while to get any sort of communication going. So we're just really disappointed in that. And
Thank you.
It's just really...
We're at time, so go
I have one
ahead.
more thing. So thoughts about Crane, when you look them up, San Francisco based, and the thing about people in Forest Grove is you either don't want people from California coming here, or you're from California. So what I see this is as a big tech company, all of these high-ups from Meta, Amazon, Google, etc., and they're just looking to make our town their data center hub. They don't care about our town. They don't care about the potential negative health consequences that people may face. They don't care about the property values. They've already been approved to have enterprise zone tax status, which means tax cuts, and in some cases that's up to 15 years long. They don't care about the water drainage, apparently. They don't care
Okay.
about the geese.
Thank
They
you.
do care about one tree that they're saving, but that's about it.
Okay, thank you so much. John Elwes. John Elwes. John Elwes. Great. Thank you. Mr. Dobson, I'm skipping you as well. You signed up on this?
He's done. He's gonna watch.
Okay. Dane Sauer.
Hi, my name is Dane Sauer. Address is 3526 16th Place. A lot of people already kind of mentioned a lot of the same issues that everybody has concerns on. Flooding, basically, where this property is, where they're wanting to build, it's already kind of old swampland, so we do have flooding issues already where we're at. So how bad is Crane, are they going to help deal with any of the water issues? The decibel issue was brought up, so I'm pretty sure the decibels will be pretty low. The problem with that is it's a low grumble noise, and it actually causes more intermental issues. They found that out with the windmills, the vibrations when the turbines are spinning. Another issue that was brought up with the workers that are coming in to build these buildings, are they going to be doing any background checks? Because there's 2 schools that butt up right next to that main road, so there should be concern. I mean, with our council here, I'm kind of surprised you guys weren't looking at doing like more schooling or more schools being built rather, as opposed to a data center that's going to give us tax money, a little bit of tax money, but they're going to also look for the tax cuts. So the other issue is it's unclear about the wattage issue. So yeah, right now our Forest Grove Power Company is saying, yeah, we can handle this amount of power. yes, we use hydro dams. However, if anybody's watched the news over the past couple of years, they're slowly removing the dams. So what's going to happen when that dam power that we usually get our power from with our co-op, what's going to happen where that power is going to go? And they're still going to want 50 to 100 megawatts of power. We're going to be back onto PGE because they'll end up buying it out. So you're going to have the local Forest Grove people not able to afford their own utilities, but the data center is going to be able to afford anything. So I'm going to keep mine pretty short. There's a lot of people that want to talk, and they could probably do a better job than I can, but thank you for your time.
I will just address one of your comments, which is that our commission has no ability to like dictate where a school is built or anything like that.
I agree, because it has to be voted upon. But another thing is, how come I got this piece of paper and I had 2 days to respond in the mail? That's bogus. And a lot of people, this should be a town vote, not just the people that are on the main strip of where this is going to be built at. I think our town needs to adjust on that.
Dale Fike.
I am Dale Feek. Most people do say Fike, but it is Feek. 3363 Levina Drive, Forest Grove. Been a resident of Forest Grove since 1966. Started as a fifth grade teacher and retired in 2000. You've got this in writing now. I want you to be able to see it instead of just on your computer. Said not to talk about Rolling Green Data Center, but it really has application to this because it has to do with power. And I'd like to have the Director of Power and Light, Keith Horman, address what Crane has said in their website. It's a 36 megawatt first phase, 100 plus megawatt the second phase. Rolling Green couldn't get it, so they didn't even do a land use application. I've been told it's take 5 to 7 years, 5 to 10 years to get the power here, based upon the wattage, based upon the megawatts that they want. And so that's a very important piece of information. I filed a public records request. I have not received that from the Power and Light, and I'm waiting for that to address. But Keith is here. Maybe you can ask him that question. Some of the things I said have already been said. The land use attorney that was here, Ken Dobson, he's a very good land use attorney. He asks very good questions that based upon code. Please consider his public testimony seriously and address the codes that he talked about. I filed an appeal to the Clean Water Services. I haven't acted on that yet. I have a meeting with the director, the chief, the executive officer, Diane Taniguchi. I'll have an appointment with her, I think, September the 11th. I'm going to address specifically the water reuse issue that was in the administrative plan that's been changed now. So I'll have more information after I get a public records request and an appeal from Clean Water Services. I met with many planners, engineers, managers, directors, clerks of Forest Grove. I took a picture of the statements on the wall between the two offices, the planning engineer office and the bills and city manager's office. It states Forest Grove City Hall. The arrow pointed to the left indicates go here for city administration, municipal color, and so forth. Utility. Arrow pointing to the right indicates go for the building permits, engineer, and planning. Then below each of those arrows are arrow indicating the same message in Spanish. At no time during any of the notification processes did the city consider translating to Spanish the notices. During the time that I served on the city's sustainability commission, we did translate our notices. I ended up being chair. Had some meetings only with Spanish-speaking participants. This is a major mistake and oversight by the city. I've attached to this letter a Spanish translation, and you have it there, of the flyer that we wrote titled Stop the Data Center. This is our attempt to compensate for a very serious oversight by the city. When I made a public comment about Creighton Data Center before the Washington County Commissioners and the Housing Authority, Board of Directors, Chair Catherine Harrington made the following statement. So for the sake of the Housing Authority Board of Directors, I believe the intersection between Mr. Feek's comments and what he has provided us in writing and the role of the Housing Authority Board of Directors is as he has mentioned. The possibility that additional data centers in Forest Grove might increase the rates of electricity and water in the city of Forest Grove might possibly impact the low-income and middle-income residents for which the Housing Authority Board of Directors has programmed to help them thrive. So I believe, I'm not speaking for Mr. Feek, but given that this is a public comment relative to our role as the Housing Authority Board of Directors, I wanted to make sure that that was clear, not only for all of us, but to our community members who might be listening or watching this meeting. And that's a recorded meeting just like this is. So I know my 3 minutes is up. I did get that timer up here, and I don't know why you as planning commissioners don't have it. The counselors have it because I made sure they got it up there. So when I'm here speaking, I can see when the time's up, just like when I make public comment at the county commissioners or when I make it the Environmental Quality Commission. You're in charge. You see the time. I don't know how much time I talk. I don't keep track of it. You look at the clock. But I really want you looking at me and listening to me, not looking at the clock. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll take a quick break. Fellow commissioners, we've probably got another 45 minutes of testimony. Does anyone need us to take a quick bio break, water break, anything like that?
I'm good.
No, people want to press forward. Okay, Paige Haxton Evans. Paige? All right, not seeing her. Melissa Bigsley.
Hi, Melissa Bigsby Sauer. My husband already talked, but a couple things. My address 3526 16th Place. Previously, before that, I lived at 4208 Beaver Way, so right by Neil Armstrong. Something I think that we really need to think about is the community. I've lived in this community my entire life. I want my kids to grow up here. I don't mean to get emotional, but it really does scare me, the unknowns of what this could impact our kids. I had a great life right across the street. That's why we bought our house where it was. Something else that I think needs to be addressed is the wildlife. We already have issues with TTM. Schools have known issues with pests. We have issues with pests. What's going to happen when they build there and all of those pests, all those animals who have built their homes because we've built our homes, where are they going to go? They're going to go right into our home. Who's going to pay for that? Because we've already had to with TTM when they had the homeless. I mean, that was almost $300,000 in cleanup that came onto our property as well. Who's going to take that on when this gets built and all of those wildlife goes into our home? That's a very big concern. And I think that definitely needs to be addressed. So going.
Thank you. Sharon Klein.
Sharon Klein. I live at 1804 Mountain View Lane, and the center will be literally 200 to 300 feet away from my backyard, which is paradise. I have lived there 47 years and been in Forest Grove over 50. And I knew something has to go back there, but when I moved there, it was outside city limits, and it was zoned commercial, and now it's light industrial. So anyway, and I'm more concerned about all the geese. It is a wetlands out there. I don't care what anybody says. 47 years it's been. So those are my main concerns. And the traffic, I can't even get out of my driveway most days. So, I mean, I don't.
Thank you. Marnie Dorflor, thank you.
Here, and it's important. My name is Marnie Dorfler. I actually live by the high school at 2118 Babbitt Court. I am a mental health provider, however, and I am very concerned about the impacts the noise and the vibration will have on our community. Not just the folks very near the center, but also the span around that. I was just looking at the decibels. I'm sure most of you have taken a flight before. Yeah, the inside of an airplane is 80 decibels, and that's the limit. So living near the data center potentially is like living on an airplane 24/7, 365 days a year, the entire time you're there. I don't think that's gonna have good health impacts, not only on folks' nervous systems, but also on their attention and their sleep. And it's certainly not gonna be great for the kids at NAMS. They're already distracted enough with our world, and this is certainly gonna help. And that's all I have to say right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Morris. Dan Morris, not seeing him. Nicholas Haxton. Okay, not seeing him. What was that? Belinda Mellinson. Thomas Wiseman. Oh, sorry, come on up.
Belinda Melanson, 1305 Mountain View Lane. You don't know me because I've been here just over a year, and I picked Forest Grove because it was kind of like home in New Hampshire. I had no intention to speak, but I agree with every single thing people are saying because there's not just NAMS. I don't know why people forget that it's on top of Fern Hill. Having the kids go through that learning environment, again, as a special educator, I was also in corporate for a long time. I still work with parents of special needs children. The noise level alone, I came in late to this process, or I would have been here sooner. But all those questions they say aren't answered, and it's probably going to be this, and it's probably going to be that. That never would have flown back in New Hampshire. You know, it never. We would have said no. Go back when you're ready. Come to us. Don't change from water to air. Don't do this. Don't. You come to us with a plan. If you have to change it, you start over. So I'm very concerned. Again, we have thousands of geese, as many people said, thousands that come past my house every day. It's really cool. It's really fun. And they live there, and they only leave for a couple months for the few months that you guys have sun here. I can't imagine also a 75-foot building blocking the sun from everybody else since you have so little sun anyways. But I don't see any value add. A couple jobs, there's not jobs. It says, oh, lots of jobs and no traffic. That doesn't make any sense. South of 100, then I hear a couple dozen, no jobs. I don't see the big benefit to anyone in Forest Grove in that location. Pick someplace else.
Thomas Wiseman.
Thank you for putting up with all of us. Thomas Wiseman, 1833 Tamarack Way, Forest Grove. On top of what everybody else is discussing, one of the things that I also looked at was, you know, they talk about vibrations. So low frequency vibrations can travel through pretty much everything. It can affect people's mental health. And in the long term, it can actually create a stress that can actually grow to heart disease or hypertension along those lines. Definitely a concern there. One other question, obviously, to look at is you've got this 7-story building right next to a bunch of houses. And then you have a shorter building further away. It's like just my way of thinking is that if like we're concerned about, you know, basically blocking out the sun, why isn't the taller building further away, a shorter building, not as close to the other residences? I mean, to me, that would be one simple solution. But yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what the rest of my neighbors are saying. So keep, consider it, take it under advisement. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Loretta Wiseman. All right. Garrett Kessler.
Hello, my name is Garrett Kostler. I live at 1750 Fur Road. I hadn't really heard much about this because I guess I'm outside the 300-foot range, even though I'm right down the road. My main concerns on this are traffic, because as me and my neighbors know, and you've heard tonight, that traffic is bad in this area. With TTM, early in the mornings, late at night, they run different shifts. There are cars speeding down my street day and night. And there's a school on that other road, on Mountain View. There's not one, two, there are 2 schools on this road. And they're going to pop another road through, maybe at the end of it. City might finish it, I think is what Bruce over there was saying. But I mean, I was thinking, if it's going to bring good jobs to Forest Grove, like, why not? Like, I'm in manufacturing, I like good jobs. But he assured us that there's going to be no traffic, there's going to be tens of jobs added to our community, minimal tax revenue, and based off of not sending out notifications, not really engaging in a vote or any kind of community hearing, I feel that this committee is kind of just not really caring. You guys already kind of figured it out, and this is just appeasing the residents, and you're going to do what you want. Even though Mr. California here with his half-assed plan is just not really cutting it. So my main concerns are there's no jobs. Like the one gentleman was saying, he could be a janitor. There's going to be dudes to like sweep up, maintain the building, but like what are people really doing? Like what's it really for? Like how is this going to help our community? Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Ray Pascal.
My name is Ray Pasquale. I live at 1750 Fur Road with Garrett. Most of what he said covers what I have to say, but I didn't know that it was going to be air cooled. That brings a little bit of concern to me. I am a severe asthmatic. If the air quality is moderately bad, I'm gonna have a bad day breathing in general. So, wildfire comes around, and I'm always carrying my inhaler and everything. But having something that could affect the air quality that close really concerns me. I saw my aunt bend her nails back, grabbing at literally anything, gasping for air from COPD. I'm not trying to end up like that. I really hope none of you or your families end up like that, because it was something absolutely terrifying. On top of that, the people from Crane mentioned that they left Hillsborough because there were hundreds of data centers and plans and stuff like that for future data centers. If there's so many just in Hillsborough, why do we need Forest Grove? It's right down the road, especially with all this opposition. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Do we have anyone on Zoom who would like to provide a comment in opposition to the proposal? Yeah, that's what I'm asking right now.
I would like to.
All right, we see you as Jamie, I believe. If you could state your full name and address for the record.
My name's Jamie Gloss. I live at 4202 Beaver Way. I live right behind NAMS, and I'm kind of disappointed that I did not get a notification. I had my neighbors walk around door to door, and I heard about this, and I was not too pleased to hear about a huge 7-story building going into that wet field. I have several points which have already been made tonight. First point I'm going to make is traffic. We already have enough traffic with Fern Hill and NAMS getting out of school. As a matter of fact, not just those two schools, but we get speeding traffic down Mountain View all the time. And as a matter of fact, last year, a child got hit on their bike going to school one day. Also, I heard that this is a possibility of radiation exposure, excuse me. I have 2 children. I don't need my children exposed to any more radiation than what they are already exposed to in their everyday lives. Also, this company, can they guarantee that our utility bills aren't going to go up? And can they also guarantee that this is not going to affect the value of our house? I moved from Tigard, so I know all about noise. We used to live right by Washington Square Mall. So I know about noise. I know about traffic. We moved out here and we love it out here. It's nice, peaceful, quiet. Like everybody else has said, we love watching the birds go by. My children love watching the birds go by. So that's a concern of mine. Also, with the school construction that happened over the summer, I already had to call code enforcement because they were starting construction at 5:30 in the morning. So we've had enough noise over the summer that we are just done. And if construction starts on this, how long are we going to have to deal with that noise on top of the noise that's already going to be with the machinery that they need to run these buildings? Also, again, what about the wildlife? Where are those birds going to go? You know, we're trying to raise our kids to respect the environment and to do good with this world. And putting up that building, all these kids at both schools, they're going to be like, oh, a building's going up, so wildlife really doesn't matter. I'm trying to talk quick here because I have several points. Also, this building will stick out like a sore thumb. Most of these houses, let alone buildings, are single story or a split level home. So you put a 7-story building in the middle of all these single level homes, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. Also, I think I addressed the 300-foot thing. People within 300 feet of the site got letters. I am just a little bit over that 300-foot rule, but I go out my back door and NAMS is right there. So this will affect us because I can see that field from my backyard. Those were my points, along with all of the other points that these people have made. I just want to thank my neighbors to bring up points that I didn't even think about. There's way too many points in negative points, excuse me, that this just doesn't need to happen. We need different light industrial, not this building. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom who wants to speak in opposition to the proposal? Okay, seeing none, I will now ask for comments from persons that are neutral. I have the sign-up sheet here, and then I will go on Zoom and ask for anyone who would like to provide neutral testimony. Edith Pillsbury.
I'm Edith Pillsbury, and I live at 1644 Birch Street, Forest Grove, 97116. I really thought by signing up first to speak that I would get to go first, but I've gotten to hear a lot of interesting commentary. I came here with a lot of questions, and then I listened to Matt speak, and he allayed a lot of my concerns. But then I listened to the other side, and a lot of what Matt said regarding water and electric use started to sound a little loosey-goosey. A lot of people have come here and talked about noise, peace, yada, yada, yada. My question is, where are the facts? Where are the environmental engineers who are going to submit environmental impact statements. I haven't heard, I mean, good grief, people. This is what most of this is about. Why wasn't this part of this whole discussion? That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to provide neutral testimony? Okay. Anyone else here who wanted to be heard that didn't get the opportunity? Okay, before I close the public hearing, does the applicant wish to rebut any of the testimony presented?
Hi, Allison Reynolds, again, counsel for the applicant. We just wanted to touch on a few things that were raised by folks that spoke in opposition. The first is that there were some questions about what the site plan actually entails and what you should be reviewing, whether or not this is essentially baked enough for you guys to make a decision on this plan. And so the city is required to review what has been submitted and what is actually being requested by the applicant. Staff goes through a process where you file an application, they do what they call a completeness check. The staff circulated to all the different departments that have relevant comments and whose feedback would be used to determine if the application actually meets the criteria. They compile all of that, they give it back to you, the applicant makes changes, and then they deem the application complete. And then they apply the approval standards that are in the code as we've discussed today to that. So if, and Chair Sanderson, you made this point, if there is a change later down the road, and as someone who, you know, I work on development applications day in and day out, that is a fairly common situation to have something where you thought it was going to work in a certain way, and then you find that you need a small change later. Then you have to come back through the same process. And if you want a change to a condition of approval, it's the same thing. And then the public is given an opportunity to make those comments on the change you're making. So if there is a change to this to address something, we would need to actually go through this process again, and the public would have an opportunity to review that and to comment. Second, I wanted to address the buffering issue that was brought up. I think there was testimony that it was not clear as to whether an industrial site that is next to residences that are also on a site that's zoned industrial needs to actually include, you know, a landscaping buffer or something like that. Staff determined that the code does not actually require that buffer, but it just made sense for us to develop a site plan where we installed buffers that are as large as would be required. I actually think they're larger than the code would require between these buildings and those homes. So even if that standard did apply, we've met it. And then finally, and I'll turn this over to Scott, we wanted to speak to the dry cooling system. We made that revision in the record several weeks ago, and it's part of the materials in your packet. And the public also has that access to that. So this is not a new change. It's part of what is in the record. Scott has extensive experience with this type of technology and building other data centers. So I'm going to just let him speak to some of the questions that were asked about that.
Yeah, Scott Franklin at Navix. So the question of air-cooled chillers was brought up by the appellant. That is not new technology. It's technology that exists here in Washington County. We've done roughly a dozen different data center projects in Hillsborough itself, and each of those have used air-cooled chillers. It's not something new. It's a less intensive use in terms of water. The equipment it can be roof mounted, it can be ground mounted, but all of that equipment from a noise standpoint is part of what will be part of the noise study that we'll complete and still have to comply with the noise ordinance. So whatever design is necessary for that air-cooled chiller process is going to be part of what we have to protect against in terms of noise mitigation. And with various projects elsewhere in Washington County, that mitigation can be made at the equipment itself, it can be made at the equipment yard, it can made at the property line. There are multiple ways that noise mitigation can be made, whether it's air-cooled or some other water-cooled system. But again, that is not a new technology. It's something that is common in this area.
Yeah, I think those are all the issues we wanted to cover. If you have additional questions, never mind.
One other
Scott
thing.
would also like to say
Yes,
something else.
sorry. One other thing. So there was a question about drainage along the east property line, and there is a wetland back there. It's a non-jurisdictional wetland. The Corps of Engineers does not take jurisdiction over it, and we have drainage. If you look in the preliminary grading and drainage plan within the packet, we have a storm line back there to make sure that we don't make that work. We are not allowed to take that out without grounds to take it out, and our plan doesn't require that to be taken out. We recognize that perhaps it's an existing drainage issue, but it qualifies as a wetland, and we don't have the authority to solve that issue as much as we would like to. We don't have the authority to do that. So our drainage system has to maintain that. So there's a certain water level that we'll have to maintain to support the wetland itself. And that's what will set the elevation of our drainage back.
And related to that, have you done, I know that this was presented at some point tonight. I can't remember if it was your presentation or the city's presentation. But I recall that an environmental impact report or study has not been done yet, but it will be done later on in the process, dependent on, no?
So an environmental impact statement that would be required under the National Environmental Policy Act is not a requirement for this land use application. There is some environmental review that is done through Clean Water Services. They do an environmental pre-screen and they look at the wetland impacts. And as part of the service provider letter that they issue, there are mitigation requirements that they impose that become a condition of approval for the application. But that's the extent of the environmental review.
Are there any further questions for the applicant?
I think the question I had was answered, but I just want to make sure that I understand it completely.
I think you did before with the red light.
Before, and now it's okay.
Just point it at your mouth this way.
The change that is in the application from water to air cooling, I just want to make sure I understand that doesn't require a change in the application for the. You've already made that adjustment, and it's already part of the application that's been approved conditionally.
Yes. Yeah, we have been working with staff extensively through this whole process, trying to solve for various things, including the availability of the recycled water from Clean Water Services. And so that was when the decision was made for this to switch to the dry cooling, which is, like Scott discussed, a known and frequently implemented technology for cooling a data center.
And then I have a similar question about the power substation. Would the future? I mean, this is not part. I really appreciate that you're actually getting well beyond what's required in this hearing. But so,
yeah,
amuse me a little bit on the substation, and let me know if the future development of that substation, if it could have any impact to the development plans currently under the conditional approval, and if there does require that, your understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that if you did have to make changes to the site plan, you would be back before us here. Is that correct?
Yeah, and perhaps the staff team can confirm this as well, but our understanding is that for that future substation, a different land use review, I believe it's conditional use permit, which involves a public hearing and lots of opportunities for testimony, would be required. We're not requesting that at this time. If we were to request that in the future, that would be the process. If based on what is occurring with that new development application, there were also changes that were needed to the application that we have in front of you, any changes that would be needed to this would also have to come back through it would be this process, well, I guess the initial staff process again. I believe it would probably be possible, since it's on the same site, to just process those together. And so you could be looking at, we're bringing this in and we're making some changes to what's already there in conjunction with that. But that is my understanding of the process that we would expect.
We would not be working under the clock that we're currently under. There would be a resetting of the clock. Is that correct?
That's correct. It'd be an entirely new application. The substation review does require a conditional use permit. That goes to the Planning Commission. There's a public hearing that's involved. Any significant changes to the site plan that's approved, that review has to go back through the Type 2 process. So the same process as for the original approval. There are some allowances for some minor modifications, minor adjustments, things like that, but anything significant to the site plan requires a new review, basically.
Thanks. That answers my questions.
I just want to ask a clarifying question to Dan. So you're saying that there will certainly be a review and public hearing for the power substation, or that there might be if there are changes to the plan?
If a substation is required for a subsequent phase of the project, then the substation approval would require the conditional use review and a public hearing with the Planning Commission.
If it is needed at all,
It's
there
needed
will
at-
be a
yeah.
hearing.
Exactly.
No, you.
Can I just clarify one
Yes.
thing? So I just wanted to clarify one point, because it may not be obvious. The substation that you're seeing that block for, that's intended to serve building 2. And so the first building is not intended to be served by that. It's we're talking at Forest Grove about a different methodology to serve building 1. So I just
Okay.
wanted to put those pieces together because it may not be obvious.
Thank you for that clarification. Any further questions from the commission? Okay, I have not heard a request to continue the public hearing. Am I wrong in that?
That would be correct. There's been no request to leave the record open or continue the public hearing at this point.
Okay. Then I am going to go ahead and say that the public testimony portion of the hearing is now closed. Let's take a 5-minute break. So resuming our hearing on this matter, I will now ask for a motion from the Planning Commission on the appeal for discussion. And then we will have an opportunity to comment on the motion.
So for maybe to help contextualize things a bit, the Planning Commission can entertain a motion to affirm the administrative decision or reverse the administrative decision. And then that would provide the opportunity for the Planning Commission to discuss the motion and then take a vote on a specific action.
I think everyone's looking around because traditionally we tend to have our discussion first and then come around to a motion. So if you're more comfortable having a discussion first before you put yourself out there on a motion, feel free to share your thoughts.
Can be done either way.
I'll get it started, I guess. I was very open to all that was said tonight, both on the actual application and current status, and understand a lot of the residents nearby and the concerns. But our job as Planning Commission is we have to go with what the laws are. I didn't hear anything from the appellant that was outside what was approved under the administrative, and so I'm in favor of denying the appeal.
And to add to your comment, I just want, I just had a discussion with one of you that was not aware that we don't work for the city. We all have day jobs. We're a board of unpaid volunteers. Any one of you can volunteer for a board or commission. We would love it. Normally, no one comes to our meetings. We're really excited to see the public participation, and I say that a little bit with humor, but like literally from the bottom of my heart, we like to see the community get involved. And like you, at least I personally, I won't speak for everyone, I'm a Forest Grove resident that doesn't like to see my town change, right? And I don't like to see what I feel are some of the small town characteristics go away. And I don't like to see empty fields and open space disappear and have things pop up in their place, particularly intrusive things. And unfortunately, we're put in the position on the commission of having to set some of those personal preferences aside and say, well, what's the law here? What are we doing here? Did they comply with the law? Here, I feel comfort. Sometimes we get these new subdivisions and stuff, and then we can they're laying out the plan and I can just envision how the landscape's going to change. Here, I know this isn't the end of the road for this project, and we're going to have an opportunity to revisit. When I look at just what we're looking at here tonight, which is the site plan, I personally feel that it has met the development criteria, and for that reason, we should affirm the city's decision, knowing that there will be both economic and procedural kind of gatekeeping along the way that will prevent some of the kind of doomsday scenarios a lot of us are worried about from happening, either because the city says no or because the applicant finds out it's not feasible and moves on elsewhere.
I would like to echo that too, that this is a process. And like I had mentioned, there are conditions that have to be met. And again, there would be another public hearing possibly if there are changes. So I agree with that. I would affirm it too.
I guess I would just like to, I'd like to acknowledge and respond to a lot of the concerns seem to be about what the current laws allow. And I think a lot of what I heard today was about the current noise ordinance isn't doing enough to control a bad situation. The current traffic, there's a lot of current existing conditions that folks are really unhappy about. And I would say that as the city, our community is kicking off a visioning. What we didn't talk a lot about tonight is the sort of land use process that happens, the bigger picture land use process where the comp plan is redone, and a lot of those ordinances get addressed in a way. And so what the chair was saying, we have existing laws and standards and the design standards that we have today, and that's what we're allowed to base our decision on today. And that's what this applicant is bound by. So I agree. I think the applicant has met the standards, the rules that are in play today. And there are opportunities, if you don't like some of the rules, to provide that feedback to the city and to change them in a direction that is more in line with your vision for the future of Forest Grove.
I would like to start by acknowledging that there could be possibly, to your point, future procedural changes. I heard from several people disdain about only residents that are within 300 feet getting notice. Who would be in charge of possibly hearing about amending that? Like, who at the city?
If the Planning Commission were desirous of changing that notice requirement, the Planning Commission would have the ability to direct staff to review that. One thing I will say is that state statute, I believe, is only 150 feet requirement, and so we do double the state statute as is. there are always going to be those issues, right? Somebody is, you make it 500 feet. Somebody who's 505 feet is going to be upset that you only did 500 feet because it's a bigger sort of impact.
Oh, why can't it be everybody in the entire town?
Yeah, I mean, there are discussions to be had there for sure, but we also have to when an application walks in the door, and I think you understand this, an application walks in the door and is filed, the rules that are in effect at that time apply throughout the rest of the process. You know, there is some sort of, you know, we can talk about this later if you want to, but this is sort of, you know, that there becomes notification fatigue too. I mean, if people are getting things within 2,000 feet of them, how many times do they look at another Fourth Grove letter and say somebody's adding an addition too close to their setback? I don't want to see this, you know. There are reasons why we have those notification requirements. And I just want to say that there will always be issues. There will always be that person who's 302 feet away, or whatever. But understood that often these developments have impacts beyond those boundaries, but we draw the lines in the sand somewhere, and that's kind of how we have to proceed by the lines we've drawn. But again, it's a conversation we can have as a commission and as staff.
Well,
Just to, if I could just piggyback onto that too, mail notification is not the only notification that's provided. There are other ways to get the information out. They may be inadequate as well, but we do publish notice in the newspaper, in the Forest Grove News Times. It's also online in the Pamplin Media website. We do post the property with signs saying there's a land use action affecting the property and a phone number to call at City Hall to get more information. So we do make an effort to get the word out, and it's not just one way that we rely on.
I know that it's definitely not at issue in this appeal, and it's not something that we necessarily have the power to, but I would definitely encourage the city to make the information, the ongoing updates about this particular project more accessible, you know, now that there's a public interest, you know, or whatever on the website, so that, you know, a lot of the problem with, I think, the notice procedure is it's necessarily antiquated. The city doesn't know every resident's email address, you know, but so they're sent out by mail, and we find out our information through different means these days. And so to the extent we can try to accommodate, you know, that modern way of thinking for a very modern project, it makes sense. So.
And I would also like to reiterate that I want to acknowledge the request to have these statements put in both English and Spanish. I think that's extremely valid. I didn't know that was not the case, but I would like to formally recommend that the city do that going forward. So to continue my statement, I hear you. I understand that is a concern, and I think that we should talk about this as a commission going forward, while understanding that the line, of course, has to be drawn in the sand somewhere. I live less than half a mile from where this data center is going to be built, on Elm Street, and so I can understand the perspectives and try and empathize with a lot of the people in the audience. Given all of that, the volunteer position of being a planning commissioner is to look at the rules as they are stated currently on the books, and then the application filed. And given that, I would like to recommend that we move forward.
Commissioner Culbertson, I think you're the only one we haven't heard from. I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any comments?
I do. Thank you. So I'd like to make a statement of support for accepting the appeal. And so as a planning commissioner, I believe it's crucial to carefully consider the implications of approving a large-scale data center development under the current zoning classification. Based on my review and interpretation of the Forest Grove Municipal Code and specific circumstances surrounding this project, I support accepting the appeal for the following reasons. Zoning classification incompatibility. The proposed 50 to 100 megawatt data center is not appropriate, as based on my understanding, appropriately aligned. Well, and the code, how I'm reading it, is what I'm trying to say, with the light industrial zoning (LI) designation. light industrial zones are intended for moderate intensity uses, which includes smaller scale manufacturing and less energy intensive operations. A facility of this scale with significant infrastructure and energy needs, I feel, is better suited for the heavy industrial HI zone. And so, sorry, one sec. And so, to the point that, oh goodness. So the zoning classification and compatibility, the proposed 50 to 100 megawatt data center has extensive energy infrastructure needs that don't align with LI, as I previously stated. And so we've heard about light industrial. And so I'm referencing FGMC chapter 10.20.030, which specifies that light industrial LI is intended for moderate intensity operations, not high energy facilities like a 50 to 100 megawatt data center. And then I'd also like to reference FGMC chapter 10.20.040, which indicates that heavy industrial HI is designed for high intensity operations, making it more suitable classification for a large scale data center. The intensive infrastructure required for such a facility, including power distribution and cooling systems, is better supported by heavy industrial zones due to the capacity for high demand operations. And that's in reference to FGMC chapter 10.60.020, which outlines the heavy industrial site development standards included, the necessary infrastructure for high capacity facilities like large data centers, and then taking environmental impact into account. The impact of a 50 to 100 megawatt data center is significant, and it involves high energy consumption, potentially proposed or not proposed considerable water usage for cooling, and potential effects on local ecosystems. It's my assessment that these impacts are more consistent with heavy industrial uses, which are subject to stricter environmental controls. And that's referencing OR 660-023-0200 parentheses 3, which requires heavy industrial developments to address substantial environmental impacts, which aligns with the scale of a 50 to 100 megawatt data center. And then also referencing ORS 197.712 parentheses 2, which mandates that zoning must accommodate the extensive infrastructure and environmental needs of large-scale developments, which are better managed under heavy industrial zoning. And so light industrial zoning lacks the capacity to handle the environmental strains proposed by such a large-scale project. And then the third point is community and planning considerations. There are significant community concerns about the impact of this data center on local infrastructure, traffic, and environmental quality, which we've all heard, and appreciate everybody's testimony for support neutral. Approving this project under light industrial zoning doesn't adequately address these concerns, I feel, and that's in reference to FGMC chapter 10.80.060, which allows for reconsideration of developments based on community feedback and alignment with zoning standards. The comprehensive plan and zoning regulations should reflect Forest Grove's capacity, given the scale of the data center. A review under heavy industrial zoning would ensure proper alignment with our long-term planning goals. And that's in reference to ORS 197.71 parentheses 2, which supports that zoning must align with extensive infrastructure and environmental considerations, making heavy industrial zoning more suitable for large-scale data centers. And then just based on insights from the Hillsborough data centers, Hillsborough's experience with data centers includes those operated by major tech companies such as Microsoft, Google, and that they demonstrate extensive power and infrastructure requirements for such facilities. For example, data centers in Hillsborough typically have power requirements ranging from 20 megawatts to over 50 megawatts per facility. And then, to point out Intel, the data center over there illustrates the scale of infrastructure needed, and that facility is located under heavy industrial zones due to the substantial power and cooling requirements. And I feel like that underscores the mismatch of a 100 or 50 to 100 megawatt data center with light industrial zoning. And so in conclusion, a 50 to 100 megawatt data center requires extensive infrastructure and has significant environmental impacts that are not suited to light industrial zoning. Based on my interpretation, the project should be reviewed under heavy industrial zoning to ensure proper alignment with Forest Grove Municipal Code and comprehensive planning standards. Accepting the appeal will ensure this development is evaluated under appropriate zoning regulations and reflects its scale and impact on our community environment. And thank you for considering these points.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right. I will now ask for a motion from the, go ahead.
Can I ask a follow-up question from the staff? How is Hillsborough zone the data centers? Are they light industrial or are they heavy industrial? You know?
I don't know that any of us are prepared to speak to Hillsborough zoning, honestly. I couldn't tell you.
I'll now ask for a motion from the Planning Commission on the appeal. Do we want to uphold the staff decision on the application or reverse it?
So I motion that we affirm the administrative decision.
Do we have a second?
I second that.
All right, I'll now call for a vote on the motion. Can we please call the roll?
Commissioner Berdahl.
And can I just ask, because this is my first hearing, am I voting on if I agree with your motion?
Yes, if you agree with the motion, say yes, and if you do not agree with the motion, say no.
I'm going to say no.
Commissioner Culbertson.
I'm sorry, I missed that last piece in terms of yes or no, for or against.
Yes is if you agree with the motion to affirm the city's decision, and no if you want to reverse the city's decision and grant the appeal.
I'm going to vote no.
Commissioner Falconer.
I vote yes.
Commissioner Farrell.
Yes.
Commissioner Stenberg.
Yes.
And Chair Sanderson.
Yes. Motion passes. All right, turning to and if that's what you were here for, you're welcome to get up and leave at this point. We know it's late. Turning to item 2C on the agenda, action items. We don't have any scheduled. Turning to item 3 on the agenda, business meeting. First item, approval of minutes from Monday, February 5th, 2024. Did everyone who was at that meeting have a chance to review the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
All those in favor say yes.
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 Any opposed?
Abstain.
We have one abstained from Commissioner Falconer. Director's report.
Nothing to report tonight in the interest of time.
And then our next meeting.
I don't know that there is any meeting we anticipate happening anytime soon that we're aware of. Potentially we have some legislative work coming up for the climate-friendly and equitable communities rules.
All right. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.